I should fire you right now. The words cut through the silence of the empty office like a blade. Adrien Cole stood frozen in the doorway, his heart hammering against his ribs as the most powerful woman in Manhattan stared him down. One photograph, one moment of weakness. That's all it took to destroy everything he'd built for his daughter. But Valerie Ashford wasn't just threatening his career. She was about to change his entire life. If you want to see how far this dangerous game goes, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Global's 42nd floor had been dimmed hours ago, leaving only the occasional desk lamp to pierce the darkness. Adrien Cole rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at the clock glowing on his computer screen. 11:47 p.m. The numbers mocked him with their lateness, reminding him that somewhere across town, his 7-year-old daughter Emma was already asleep, tucked in by Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who'd become more family than babysitter over the past 3 years. 3 years since the divorce. 3 years of single fatherhood. 3 years of proving to everyone, and himself, that he could provide the life his little girl deserved. Adrien stretched his arms above his head, feeling his spine crack in protest. The financial report spread across his dual monitors represented 2 weeks of meticulous work, analyzing market trends and investment opportunities that would determine Sterling Global's next quarter strategy. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was solid, dependable, the kind of work that earned steady paychecks and maybe, just maybe, a promotion that would finally let him move Emma out of their cramped one-bedroom apartment in Queens. He'd grown up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, population 3,200, where his father had worked the same factory line for 30 years until the plant closed down. Adrien had watched his parents' dreams shrivel like corn stalks in a drought, had seen the light fade from his mother's eyes as she clipped coupons and stretched every dollar until it screamed. He'd made a promise at 18, standing in that tiny kitchen with its peeling linoleum. His kids would never know that kind of struggle. Now, at 32, he was keeping that promise one late night at a time. Adrien saved his work and stood, his dress shirt wrinkled from 14 hours of sitting. Coffee. He needed coffee if he was going to make it through the final review. The break room was at the other end of the floor, past the executive suites where the real power players worked in offices large enough to fit his entire apartment. The hallway stretched before him like a canyon of glass and steel, his footsteps muffled by thick carpet that probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. Abstract art hung on the walls, the kind that made him think of Emma's finger paintings, except these had price tags with multiple zeros. He was halfway to the break room when he noticed it, a sliver of light cutting across the darkened hallway from an office that should have been empty. The CEO's office. Valerie Ashford's domain. Adrien slowed his pace, curiosity warring with common sense. Everyone knew the CEO worked insane hours. Her reputation as a corporate titan wasn't built on 9-to-5 schedules, but he'd never actually seen her this late. The few times they'd crossed paths, she'd been a distant figure of authority, immaculately dressed, impossibly composed, and utterly untouchable. The kind of woman who could silence a boardroom with a glance and reshape entire market sectors with a single decision. She terrified most of the staff. Adrien had learned to simply stay off her radar, but something made him pause as he drew level with that half-open door. Maybe it was exhaustion lowering his inhibitions. Maybe it was the strangeness of finding another soul in this tomb of darkened cubicles. Or maybe it was something else entirely. A pull he couldn't name and wouldn't understand until much later. Adrien turned his head. Through the gap, he could see into the corner office that occupied prime real estate overlooking the glittering expanse of Manhattan. The view alone was worth millions, a sweeping panorama of light and steel and infinite possibility. But Adrien's eyes didn't go to the windows. They went to her. Valerie Ashford sat behind her massive desk, but she wasn't reviewing contracts or making the late-night calls that had built her empire. She was simply sitting, her posture uncharacteristically soft, staring at something in her hands. Even from this distance, Adrien could see what held her attention, a photograph in a simple silver frame. The powerful CEO who commanded rooms full of executives and negotiated billion-dollar deals looked alone. Profoundly, achingly alone. She wore a white silk blouse, her jacket discarded over the back of her chair. Her dark hair, usually swept up in a severe bun, fell loose around her shoulders, making her look younger than her 50 years. Softer. human in a way that seemed at odds with her reputation. Adrien knew he should move, should keep walking. This was none of his business, and Valerie Ashford was notorious for her privacy. But he couldn't stop watching as she traced one finger along the edge of that photograph, her expression distant and unguarded in a way he suspected few people ever witnessed. What was she thinking about? Who was in that picture? Then, as if sensing his presence through some sixth sense honed by decades of boardroom battles, Valerie's eyes lifted. Their gazes locked. Time seemed to crystallize, stretching the moment into something sharp and uncomfortable. Adrien's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes, he'd never been close enough to notice their color before, were a striking gray, like storm clouds over steel. And right now those eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made his pulse spike. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then Valerie stood, the photograph carefully set back on her desk. She moved with the controlled grace of a predator, crossing her office in measured steps. When she reached the door, she pulled it open wider. "Mr. Cole." Her voice was low, each syllable precisely shaped. Not a question. She knew exactly who he was. Adrien's throat went dry. "Ms. Ashford, I was just... Come here." It wasn't a request. Adrien's feet moved before his brain could fully process the command, carrying him across the threshold into an office he'd never expected to enter. Up close, he could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle that reminded him of rain and cedar. The office was immaculate, every surface organized with military precision, but warmer than he'd expected. Books lined one wall, actual books with worn spines suggesting they'd been read rather than displayed for show. Valerie closed the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded unnaturally loud in the silence. She turned to face him, and Adrien suddenly understood why senior executives stumbled over their presentations in her presence. This close, her beauty was undeniable. Classical features that age had refined rather than diminished, sharp cheekbones, and those penetrating eyes that seemed to see straight through corporate pleasantries into something deeper. "Do you make it a habit," she said quietly, "of spying on your superiors?" "No, ma'am. I wasn't spying, I just..." Adrien stopped, realizing how weak any excuse would sound. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked." "But you did look." She took a step closer, and Adrien caught himself leaning back slightly, trying to maintain some professional distance. "You saw me. What exactly did you see, Mr. Cole?" The question felt loaded, dangerous. Adrien chose his words carefully. "Nothing. I mean, I saw you at your desk, but I wasn't trying to..." "Look in here again," Valerie interrupted, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "And you're fired." The threat hung in the air between them, sharp and real. Adrien's mind immediately went to Emma, to the apartment lease due next month, to the careful budget he maintained where every penny had a purpose. Losing this job would mean starting over, would mean breaking promises he'd sworn to keep. He met her eyes, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. "You can relax. I didn't see anything." The words came out steadier than he felt, with a hint of humor he hadn't intended. It was a defense mechanism from his Midwestern upbringing. When cornered, crack a joke and hope for the best. Something flickered across Valerie's face. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough to surprise him. For a moment, the CEO mask slipped, revealing something unexpected underneath. "Is that supposed to be reassuring?" she asked, and was that amusement in her voice? "I'm really hoping it is," Adrien admitted, "because I need this job, Miss Ashford. I'm good at what I do. I work harder than anyone on this floor, and I've never given you or anyone else reason to doubt my professionalism. Tonight was just wrong place, wrong time." Valerie studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The silence stretched between them, loaded with something Adrien didn't understand but could feel humming in the air like static electricity before a storm. "You're working late," she finally said, the threat in her voice softening to something more conversational. "Financial projections for Q4. They're due tomorrow." Adrien gestured vaguely toward the hallway. "I was just getting coffee. At midnight." "Emma, my daughter, she's asleep anyway. Might as well use the quiet hours to get ahead." Another flicker of something crossed Valerie's face. Interest? Recognition? "How old is your daughter?" 7. Almost 8. Adrien found himself relaxing fractionally, grateful for the shift to safer territory. She's the reason I'm here, actually. Everything I do is for her. Single father? It wasn't really a question. Valerie Ashford didn't rise to CEO without learning to read people like quarterly reports. 3 years now. Her mother decided the corporate wife life wasn't for her. Can't say I blame her. I'm not exactly easy to live with when I'm focused on work. Adrien stopped, realizing he was oversharing with the last person who needed to know about his personal life. Sorry, you didn't ask for my life story. No, Valerie said quietly. I didn't. But she didn't sound annoyed. If anything, she sounded thoughtful. The financial projections you're working on, are they comprehensive? The abrupt return to business caught Adrien off guard. Yes, ma'am. I've analyzed 17 different market scenarios, accounting for projected interest rate changes, commodity price fluctuations, and geopolitical risk factors. I believe I've identified 3 particularly strong investment opportunities that I'll want to see them. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., bring everything to my office. Adrien blinked. Tomorrow? I thought these went through the department heads first, then, tomorrow, Mr. Cole, 9 a.m. Valerie moved back toward her desk, effectively dismissing him, but then she paused, glancing back over her shoulder. And Mr. Cole, your discretion regarding what you saw tonight is appreciated. It was the closest she'd come to acknowledging the vulnerability he'd witnessed, the unguarded moment with that photograph. You didn't see anything either, Adrien said quietly, understanding dawning. We're even. The small smile that crossed Valerie's face was genuine this time, transforming her features in a way that made Adrien's breath catch for an entirely different reason than fear. Get your coffee, Mr. Cole. Those projections won't finish themselves. Adrien left the office on legs that felt distinctly unsteady, his heart still pounding from the encounter. The break room coffee tasted like burnt rubber when he finally reached it, but he barely noticed. His mind kept replaying those few minutes in Valerie Ashford's office, trying to understand what had just happened. A threat, an unexpected conversation, and something else, something he couldn't quite name but could feel settling into his chest like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples in every direction. He returned to his desk and tried to focus on the financial models, but the numbers kept blurring. Finally, at 2 a.m., Adrien gave up and headed home, his mind still churning. The next morning arrived too quickly. Adrien had managed maybe 4 hours of sleep before Emma's alarm went off, her cheerful voice cutting through his exhaustion like sunshine through clouds. Daddy, you're still here! She launched herself onto his bed, all wild curls and gap-toothed grin. You're never home when I wake up. Adrien pulled his daughter into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Special occasion, kiddo. I've got an important meeting this morning. More important than making me pancakes? Emma's eyes went wide with exaggerated disappointment. Nice try. You had pancakes yesterday. How about cereal? With the marshmallows. The sugary cereal is for weekends. You know the rules. Emma groaned dramatically, flopping back on the bed like she'd been shot. You're the worst dad ever. Second worst, Adrien corrected, tickling her ribs until she squealed. There's definitely someone worse than me out there. Fine, but Saturday you owe me extra marshmallows. Deal. They went through their morning routine, Emma chattering about her upcoming school play, while Adrien mentally rehearsed his presentation to Valerie. He'd woken at 5 to polish the financial projections, triple-checking every calculation and data point. Whatever had happened last night, he wasn't going to waste this opportunity to impress the CEO, Mrs. Chen arrived at 7:30 to walk Emma to school, her weathered face creasing into warm smiles as she fussed over both of them. The elderly woman had been a godsend since the divorce, stepping into the grandmother role that Emma's actual grandparents, scattered across the Midwest and too proud or too bitter to maintain close relationships, had never filled. You look tired, Mrs. Chen observed, straightening Adrien's tie with practiced efficiency. Too much work again. Important presentation today. Adrien kissed Emma's forehead and grabbed his briefcase. Wish me luck, kiddo. Good luck, Daddy. Emma hugged him tight. Knock 'em dead. Where did you learn that phrase? Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman shrugged innocently. What? It's what they say. Adrien left them laughing, his nerves building with each subway stop that brought him closer to Sterling Global's headquarters. By the time he rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, his palms were sweating despite the air conditioning. The executive suite area was a different world in daylight. Where last night had been shadowy and intimate, morning brought harsh fluorescent clarity. Valerie's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who'd worked for the CEO for 15 years, looked up as Adrien approached. "Mr. Cole? 9 a.m. appointment?" "Yes, ma'am." "She's expecting you. Go right in." Adrien knocked twice before entering, his briefcase clutched like a shield. Valerie's office looked entirely different in daylight. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the space with golden warmth. The CEO stood at those windows, her back to the door, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. She wore a charcoal gray suit today, her hair pulled back in that severe bun, every inch the corporate titan. The vulnerable woman from last night might have been a dream. "Mr. Cole, close the door." Adrien obeyed, his pulse jumping. Valerie turned, and those gray eyes locked onto him with laser focus. "Your projections. Let's see them." For the next 40 minutes, Adrien presented his analysis with a confidence born from knowing his work was solid. He walked Valerie through market trends, highlighted potential risks, and outlined 3 investment opportunities he believed could yield significant returns. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable as she absorbed every detail. When he finished, silence filled the office. "The third opportunity," Valerie finally said, "the renewable energy sector consolidation you mentioned. Why are you confident in that timeline?" Adrien had anticipated the question. "The regulatory environment is shifting. 3 major policy changes are pending in Europe and Asia that will incentivize consolidation. The companies I've identified are positioned perfectly to benefit, but the window is narrow. If we move in the next 60 days, we'll be ahead of the curve." Valerie nodded slowly. "Bold, aggressive, I like it." Relief flooded through Adrien's chest. "This is good work, Mr. Cole. Better than good." Valerie set down the report and leaned back in her chair, studying him with that penetrating gaze. "How long have you been with Sterling Global?" 2 years, 8 months. "And in that time, how many of your analyses have been presented directly to senior management?" Adrien shifted his weight. "None, ma'am. Usually they go through department heads, get refined, then maybe make it up the chain. That changes now. I want you reporting directly to me on strategic initiatives." Adrien's mind reeled. "Ma'am, I appreciate the opportunity, but there are protocols, chain of command, which I'm circumventing because you've demonstrated value. I don't want filtered through bureaucracy." Valerie's tone left no room for argument. "You'll maintain your current responsibilities, but add strategic analysis as a direct report. Patricia will arrange a schedule. We'll meet weekly, possibly more often, as projects develop." This was huge. This was career-changing. This was exactly the kind of break that could transform his and Emma's life. It was also complicated in ways Adrien was only beginning to understand. "Thank you, Ms. Ashford. I won't disappoint you." "See that you don't." Valerie stood, signaling the meeting's end. But as Adrien gathered his materials, she added quietly, "And Mr. Cole? When we're alone, you can call me Valerie." Adrien froze, his hand stilling on his briefcase. That was unusual. The CEO didn't invite informality. She maintained strict professional boundaries with everyone. "Are you sure that's appropriate?" he asked carefully. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, ma'am, I just—" "Valerie," she corrected, a hint of that small smile playing at her lips. "When we're alone, it's Valerie." "Okay." Valerie. The name felt strange on his tongue, intimate in a way that made his chest tighten. "Then when we're alone, you should call me Adrien." "Adrien." She tested the name, her voice making it sound different somehow, more personal. "I'll see you next week, Adrien. Same time." He left the office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet, transforming familiar landscape into uncharted territory. The week that followed was a blur of activity. Word spread quickly about Adrien's new reporting relationship with the CEO. Some colleagues congratulated him, others watched with barely concealed jealousy. Marcus Grant, a senior executive who'd been with Sterling Global since its founding, looked at Adrien like he was something unpleasant he'd discovered on his shoe. Quite the meteoric rise, Cole, Marcus commented in the break room Friday afternoon, his smile not reaching his eyes. From analyst to CEO's pet project in one meeting. That must be some kind of record. Adrien poured his coffee carefully, not taking the bait. Just doing my job. Of course. We all know how dedicated you are. Marcus's pause was deliberate, loaded with insinuation. Burning the midnight oil, working late, very dedicated indeed. Adrien met the older man's gaze steadily. Marcus Grant was old money, Ivy League, the kind of executive who'd expected to climb the corporate ladder through connections rather than competence. Valerie's decision to build Sterling Global on merit over pedigree had always rankled him. Is there something you want to say, Marcus? Just friendly advice. The view from the top can be intoxicating, especially for someone from... Marcus's eyes swept over Adrien's off-the-rack suit. More modest circumstances. But falls from that height tend to be fatal, career-wise speaking, of course. I'll keep that in mind. Adrien left before he said something he'd regret. He'd dealt with Marcus's type before. People who resented anyone who earned their position rather than inheriting it. But the encounter left a sour taste that lingered. That evening, as Adrien helped Emma with her homework, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dinner tomorrow, 8 p.m. Address attached. Come alone. V. Adrien stared at the message, his heart rate kicking up. This was crossing a line, wasn't it? A private dinner with the CEO, outside the office, outside business hours. This was dangerous, exciting, completely inappropriate. He should decline, should maintain professional boundaries, should... I'll be there, he typed back before he could overthink it. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Who's texting you? You're making a weird face. Nobody, kiddo, just work stuff. Work is boring. Extremely boring, Adrien agreed, his mind already racing ahead to tomorrow night, wondering what he'd just agreed to and why his pulse was pounding like he'd run a marathon. The next evening, Adrien stood outside an exclusive French restaurant in the West Village, feeling spectacularly out of place. The address Valerie had sent belonged to the kind of establishment where reservations were made months in advance and prices weren't listed on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Adrien had borrowed a better suit from his one friend in investment banking, spent 20 minutes on YouTube learning how to tie a proper Windsor knot, and left Emma with Mrs. Chen with vague explanations about a work function. Now, standing on the sidewalk while well-dressed couples entered and exited through gleaming glass doors, he seriously questioned every decision that had led him to this moment. A black car pulled up to the curb, the rear window lowered, revealing Valerie. Are you planning to stand out here all evening, or would you like to join me? She wore a simple black dress, her hair down around her shoulders like that first night in her office. Without the corporate armor, she looked younger, softer, almost approachable. Almost. Adrien slid into the car, hyper-aware of the small space they now shared, of her perfume filling the air, of the way her eyes tracked his movement. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, as the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. I wasn't sure I should. But you're here. But I'm here, Adrien echoed, meeting her gaze. Why did you invite me, Valerie? She was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city lights streaming past. Because I wanted to. Is that reason enough? For you? Probably. For me... Adrien shook his head. I don't understand what this is. Neither do I, Valerie admitted, and the honesty in her voice startled him. But I'd like to find out, if you're willing. The restaurant was everything Adrien expected, and nothing he was prepared for. They were led to a private corner table where the lighting was low and intimate, where the other diners were far enough away to provide the illusion of solitude. A waiter appeared with wine that probably cost more than Adrien's monthly rent. I hope you don't mind, Valerie said, but I took the liberty of ordering for us both. The chef is a personal friend. Of course he is, Adrien murmured, then caught himself. What? Sorry, that sounded... honest? Valerie's lips curved. I prefer honesty, Adrien. It's refreshingly rare in my world. The food arrived in artistic arrangements that looked almost too beautiful to eat. They talked about business at first, safe territory, familiar ground. But gradually, inevitably, the conversation shifted. Tell me about Emma, Valerie said, setting down her wine glass. You mentioned she's almost 8? Adrien's face lit up the way it always did when discussing his daughter. Yeah, she's incredible. Scary smart, funny, completely fearless. She wants to be an astronaut one week, a veterinarian the next, a famous chef the week after that. The world is this huge, exciting possibility to her, you know? I want to keep it that way as long as possible. That's why you work so hard, to give her opportunities. To give her choices, Adrien corrected. I grew up in a town where your choices were made for you by circumstance and economics. I want Emma to decide her own future, whatever that looks like. Valerie nodded slowly, something complicated crossing her face. My daughter would have been 25 this year. The past tense landed like a physical blow. Adrien set down his fork. Would have been? Sophia, she was 7 when she died. Cancer. Valerie's voice remained steady, controlled, but Adrien could hear the carefully contained grief beneath. It's been 18 years, and there are still moments when I forget she's gone. I'll see a little girl with dark curls and think, that's Sophia, before reality catches up. I'm so sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Adrien didn't know what else to say. My husband, Richard, he built Sterling Global. We built it together, really. It was supposed to be Sophia's legacy. After she died, Richard threw himself into work. I think he believed if the company grew large enough, successful enough, it would somehow balance the scales, fill the hole her death left. Did it work? What do you think? Valerie's smile was sad. Richard had a heart attack 5 years ago, died at his desk, surrounded by contracts and quarterly reports, and I was left running the empire we'd built to outrun our grief. Adrien understood then, with sudden clarity, what he'd witnessed that night in her office. The photograph hadn't been of corporate achievements or business milestones. It had been of the family she'd lost, the life that had slipped through her fingers while she built towers of steel and glass. Is that why you invited me here? He asked quietly. Because I remind you of what you lost? No. Valerie met his eyes directly. I invited you because when I look at you, I don't think about the past. I think about possibility. The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to examine. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing from heavy topics to lighter ones and back again. Valerie told him about building the company, about the battles she'd fought in boardrooms where women weren't welcome, about the careful balance required to lead with strength while being dismissed as cold or calculating. Adrien shared stories about raising Emma alone, about the late-night panic attacks in those first months after the divorce, about learning to braid hair from YouTube tutorials and failing spectacularly. I once sent her to school with what I thought was a French braid, he admitted, laughing. Turned out it was more of a tangled disaster. Her teacher very kindly showed me what I'd done wrong. You're doing it alone, though. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. I'm not always sure which. Both, Valerie said. The best people usually are. As the evening wore on, Adrien found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't since before the divorce. Valerie was brilliant and sharp-witted, but she was also genuinely interested in what he had to say. She didn't dismiss his opinions or talk over him the way his ex-wife had. She listened, challenged, engaged. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and Adrien couldn't bring himself to care. Outside the restaurant, waiting for her car, Valerie turned to him. The streetlights cast shadows across her face, softening the sharp angles. Thank you for tonight, Adrien. I should be thanking you. This was... He gestured helplessly at the restaurant. Not my usual Saturday night. Mine either, she admitted. I can't remember the last time I had dinner with someone and just talked. Not negotiated, not strategized, just talked. The car pulled up. Valerie's driver stepped out to open the door, but she hesitated before getting in. I'd like to do this again, she said. If you would. Adrien knew what the smart answer was, knew he should step back, maintain distance, protect the career opportunity she'd given him. But standing there in the cool evening air, watching the way she looked at him, like he was something more than just another employee, he couldn't make himself say no. I'd like that too. Valerie smiled, genuine and unguarded, and Adrien felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked down tight since his divorce, since he'd decided Emma was all that mattered, since he'd stopped believing in the possibility of connection. Good night, Adrien. Good night, Valerie. He watched her car disappear into traffic, then started the long subway ride back to Queens, his mind replaying every moment of the evening. Adrien Cole, single father from nowhere, Iowa, was falling for the most powerful woman in Manhattan, and he had absolutely no idea what came next. The following Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequences Adrien hadn't yet considered. He sat at his desk, staring at the same spreadsheet he'd been pretending to work on for 20 minutes, his mind replaying Saturday night in an endless loop. The way Valerie had smiled across the candlelight, the sound of her laugh when he'd told her about Emma's disastrous attempt at cooking breakfast, the feeling of possibility that had hummed between them like a live wire. His phone buzzed. A message from Valerie. My office. 10 minutes. Adrien's pulse quickened. He grabbed his notebook and headed toward the executive suite, hyper-aware of the glances that followed him. The whispers had already started. The junior analyst who'd somehow caught the CEO's attention, who had weekly meetings behind closed doors, who'd been seen leaving the building with her on Saturday evening. Patricia waved him through without her usual professional smile, and Adrien wondered what she knew, what she suspected. Valerie stood at her windows, her silhouette sharp against the morning light. She didn't turn when he entered. Close the door, Adrien. He obeyed, the click of the latch loud in the quiet office. We need to talk about Saturday, she said, still facing the window. Adrien's stomach dropped. Here it came, the inevitable conversation where she explained it had been a mistake, that they needed to maintain boundaries, that whatever he thought might happen between them was impossible. I understand, he started. It was inappropriate, and it was perfect. Valerie turned, and the intensity in her eyes stopped his words cold. And that's the problem. She crossed to her desk, her movements controlled but tense. I haven't felt that way in years, Adrien. Present, engaged. Like I was a person instead of a position. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think so. No, you don't. Valerie's voice sharpened. You have a daughter who depends on you, a career that's finally gaining momentum. I have a company with 7,000 employees, shareholders, board members who would love any excuse to question my judgment. What we're doing, what we're starting, it's reckless. Adrien stepped closer. Then why did you invite me to dinner? Because I'm apparently willing to risk everything for one evening of feeling human again. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Pathetic, isn't it? It's not pathetic, it's honest. Honesty is a luxury people like me can't afford. Maybe that's the problem. Adrien knew he should stop, should accept whatever boundary she was trying to establish. But the words kept coming. You've spent so long being the CEO, the leader, the woman who doesn't need anyone, that you've forgotten what it's like to just be. Valerie's expression flickered with something raw. And you think you can remind me? I think we remind each other. Adrien held her gaze. I've spent 3 years being nothing but Emma's dad, the guy who works late and sacrifices everything for his kid's future. Saturday night, I remembered I'm also just Adrien, a person who enjoys good conversation and better company, who deserves more than an endless cycle of work and sleep. The silence between them felt electric. This could destroy both our careers, Valerie said quietly. I know. People will talk. They're already talking. Let them talk. You say that now, but you don't understand the scrutiny, the judgment. They'll call you opportunistic, say you're sleeping your way to success. They'll call me a fool, say I'm compromised, that I'm thinking with my... She stopped, color rising in her cheeks. Heart? Adrien finished. Maybe you should be. Valerie stared at him for a long moment, and Adrien could see the war playing out behind those gray eyes. Duty versus desire. Control versus surrender. The life she'd built versus the life she might still want. One more dinner, she finally said. Wednesday. My place this time. I'll cook. Adrien blinked. You cook? I'm full of surprises, Mr. Cole. The corner of her mouth lifted. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. She handed him a business card with an address written on the back. An exclusive building on the Upper East Side that Adrien recognized from magazines Emma liked to flip through, pointing out apartments she declared would be perfect for a famous astronaut. Now get out of my office before Patricia starts taking bets on what we're doing in here. Adrien left feeling like he'd just agreed to jump off a cliff without checking if there was water below. The next 2 days crawled by with excruciating slowness. Adrien threw himself into work, trying to ignore the knowing looks from colleagues and the increasingly cold shoulder from Marcus Grant. He picked Emma up from school, helped with homework, made dinners, read bedtime stories, all while his mind kept drifting to Wednesday evening. Tuesday night, Emma looked up from her math worksheet with the uncanny perception children sometimes displayed. "Daddy, are you happy?" The question caught Adrien off guard. "Of course I'm happy, kiddo. I've got you, don't I?" "No, I mean really happy. Like smiling for no reason happy. You've been doing that a lot." Had he? Adrien tried to remember if he'd been smiling more than usual and realized she was right. Despite the stress, despite the uncertainty, something in him had lightened over the past week. "I guess I am happy," he admitted. "Is that okay with you?" Emma grinned, showing the gap where her front tooth had fallen out last week. "It's super okay. You're more fun when you're happy. Can we have ice cream to celebrate?" "It's a school night." "But you're happy. That's special." Adrien laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. "Fine. But just one scoop. 2 scoops. 1.5 final offer. Deal." Emma jumped up, abandoning her math to drag him toward the freezer. Later, after she was asleep, Adrien stood in his closet staring at his limited wardrobe options. What did one wear to a private dinner at the CEO's penthouse apartment? The borrowed suit from Saturday was already back with its owner. His own suits were serviceable but obviously off the rack, showing their age. He settled on dark slacks and a button-down shirt that Emma had once declared made him look fancy but not boring. It would have to do. Wednesday arrived with deceptive normalcy. Adrien managed to avoid Valerie all day, focusing on a market analysis that actually required his full attention. At 5:30, he left the office early for the first time in months, claiming a dentist appointment that no one questioned. The subway ride to the Upper East Side felt like traveling to a different planet. Adrien emerged from underground into a neighborhood of pristine sidewalks, doormen in crisp uniforms, and the kind of quiet that only serious money could buy. Valerie's building stood 30 stories tall, all glass and steel with an entrance that looked more like a luxury hotel than an apartment complex. The doorman, an older gentleman with the bearing of military service, checked Adrien's name against a list before nodding him through. "Ms. Ashford is expecting you, sir. Penthouse level, elevator on the right." The elevator was the smoothest Adrien had ever experienced, rising with barely a whisper of sound. When the doors opened directly into Valerie's apartment, because of course the penthouse had a private elevator, Adrien stepped into a space that took his breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Central Park and the city beyond, the evening light painting everything in shades of amber and rose. The interior was elegant but surprisingly warm, with comfortable furniture, more of those well-worn books, and personal touches that suggested this was a home rather than just a showcase. Valerie appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple cashmere sweater, her feet bare. Adrien had never seen her look so relaxed, so accessible. "You found it," she said. And was she nervous? The great Valerie Ashford nervous? The doorman was very thorough. I think he considered frisking me. "Davis takes his job seriously." Valerie gestured toward the living area. "Wine? I opened a Bordeaux, but I have others if you prefer." "Bordeaux is perfect." Adrien had no idea if it was perfect, had no reference for what made wine good beyond "doesn't taste like rubbing alcohol." But he was willing to learn. The kitchen was as impressive as the rest of the apartment, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. Something on the stove smelled incredible, rich and savory. "You really do cook," Adrien observed, accepting the wine glass she offered. "My mother insisted I learn. She believed powerful women were most dangerous when they didn't need anyone for anything." Valerie stirred whatever was simmering in the pan. Turns out she was right, just not in the way she intended. After Richard died, after Sophia, cooking became meditation, something I could control when everything else was chaos. Adrien leaned against the counter, watching her move through the space with practiced efficiency. "What are we having?" "Coq au vin." It was Sophia's favorite. She used to stand on a stool right where you're standing and help me chop vegetables. Valerie's hand stilled for a moment. "I don't make it often anymore. Too many memories. But tonight felt like the right time." The intimacy of that admission settled over Adrien like a weight. This wasn't just dinner. This was Valerie opening doors she'd kept locked for years. inviting him into the parts of her life she showed no one. Tell me about her, Adrien said softly. Sophia. But Valerie was quiet for so long that Adrien thought she might refuse. Then she set down her spoon and took a sip of wine, her eyes distant. She was fearless. Absolutely fearless. She wanted to climb everything, explore everything, question everything. Richard used to joke that she'd either run a country or burn one down, and we'd just have to wait to see which. A sad smile crossed Valerie's face. She was diagnosed at 6, leukemia. We threw everything at it, the best doctors, experimental treatments, trials. For a year it looked like she might beat it. Then she didn't. Adrien finished quietly. Then she didn't. Valerie turned back to the stove. The worst part wasn't losing her, though that was unbearable. It was watching her lose pieces of herself, the energy, the fearlessness, the questions. By the end, she was so tired, and I couldn't fix it. All my power, all my resources, and I couldn't save my own daughter. Adrien set down his wine and moved closer, not touching, but present. I can't imagine that kind of loss. I hope you never have to. Valerie met his eyes. Emma is lucky to have you. Don't take a single moment for granted. I try not to. Some days are harder than others. Tell me about the hard days. So Adrien did. He told her about this first night alone with Emma after the divorce, when his daughter had cried herself to sleep, asking why mommy left. About the school events where he was the only father in a sea of mothers, feeling conspicuously out of place. About the constant fear that he wasn't enough, that his daughter deserved better than his stumbling attempts at parenting. Valerie listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood the weight of single parenthood in ways most people didn't. You're doing better than you think, she said as they moved to the dining room carrying plates of food that looked and smelled restaurant quality. Emma is happy. That's what matters. How do you know she's happy? You've never met her. Because you talk about her the way Richard and I used to talk about Sophia. Like she's the sun, and you're just grateful to orbit in her light. That kind of love creates happy children. They ate slowly, the conversation flowing from childhood memories to music preferences to books they'd loved. Adrien discovered that Valerie had a weakness for old detective novels, the kind published in paperback with lurid covers. She discovered that Adrien had read philosophy in college before switching to finance, and they spent 20 minutes debating free will versus determinism while the city lights sparkled outside the windows. Somewhere around the second bottle of wine, Adrien realized he'd stopped being nervous, stopped seeing her as the CEO or the powerful woman who controlled his career. She was just Valerie, brilliant and complicated, wounded and resilient, lonely in the way that people who've lost everything become. Can I ask you something? Adrien set down his fork. Why me? I've been asking myself the same question. Valerie considered her wine glass. Honest answer? I don't know. Maybe because you looked at me that night in my office and saw a person instead of a position. Maybe because you make me laugh. Maybe because when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before grief and responsibility turned me into something hard and untouchable. You're not untouchable. No? She raised an eyebrow. Everyone else seems to think so. Everyone else is wrong. The air between them shifted, charged with awareness that had been building all evening. Valerie stood, collecting dishes, and Adrien followed her to the kitchen. They moved around each other in the small space, the proximity deliberate now, testing boundaries neither had explicitly acknowledged. I should probably go, Adrien said, though he made no move toward the door. It's getting late. Probably. Valerie turned to face him, close enough that he could count the silver threads in her dark hair, see the faint lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent squinting at contracts and quarterly reports. Or you could stay. For coffee. Is that what we're calling it? Adrien. His name was a warning and an invitation simultaneously. He stepped closer, giving her time to retreat, to reestablish the boundaries they were clearly about to cross. Instead, she tilted her chin up, her eyes challenging him to make the first move. Adrien cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Tell me this is a bad idea. This is a terrible idea, Valerie whispered. The worst possible decision we could make. Okay. Just checking. He kissed her. The world narrowed to the softness of her lips, the way she made a small sound of surprise before kissing him back with an intensity that stole his breath. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Adrien wrapped his arms around her waist, feeling how perfectly she fit against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Valerie rested her forehead against his. "We're going to regret this," she said. "Probably. Everyone will find out eventually. Most likely. It could ruin everything we've worked for." "I know." Valerie pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "So, why does it feel like the first right thing I've done in years?" Adrien didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the moment. They stood in her kitchen, wrapped around each other like teenagers, the city sparkling outside the windows. Eventually they made it to the couch, where they talked until 2 in the morning, interspersed with more kisses, learning the geography of each other in careful increments. Adrien discovered that Valerie's neck was sensitive, that she had a small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood fall, that she laughed differently when she was relaxed, freer, younger. "I should really go," he said for the third time, making no effort to leave. "You keep saying that." Valerie was curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. "I have a 7-year-old who wakes up at 6:30 demanding breakfast. Tomorrow's Thursday. Don't you have our standing meeting? At 9, I'll look like I haven't slept." "You haven't slept." She tilted her head to look at him. "Will Emma be okay with Mrs. Chen in the morning?" "She's fine with Mrs. Chen. Why?" "Because I'm not ready for you to leave yet." Adrien's heart did something complicated in his chest. "Valerie, stay. Just for a few more hours." Her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "I don't want to be alone tonight." So he stayed. They moved to her bedroom eventually, though nothing happened beyond more conversation and tangled limbs and the strange intimacy of sleeping next to another person for the first time in years. Adrien woke at 5:30 to find Valerie already awake, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Hi," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Hi." She touched his face gently. "Any regrets?" "Not even one." "You?" "Terrified," she admitted, "but no regrets." Adrien made it home by 7, showered and changed in record time, and got Emma to school with minutes to spare. Mrs. Chen gave him a knowing look that he pretended not to notice. At 9 o'clock sharp, he knocked on Valerie's office door, both of them maintaining perfect professionalism as he presented his latest market analysis. But when Patricia stepped out to take a call, Valerie's hand found his across her desk, their fingers linking for just a moment. "Tonight?" she asked. "I have Emma." "Tomorrow then, my place again." "Valerie, we need to be careful. If people find out—" "Let me worry about that." She squeezed his hand before releasing it. "I'm not giving this up, Adrien. Not yet." The next 3 weeks were the most exhilarating and terrifying of Adrien's life. They fell into a rhythm, stolen evenings when Emma was with her school friends, late-night phone calls after his daughter was asleep, careful professionalism at work that fooled exactly no one. The whispers grew louder. Adrien caught fragments of conversation in break rooms and hallways, speculation about how he'd really earned his promotion, suggestions that Valerie was having a midlife crisis, crude jokes about young men and older women that made his jaw clench. Marcus Grant became bolder in his antagonism, his comments in meetings increasingly pointed. "That's an interesting perspective, Cole," Marcus said during a strategy session, "though I wonder if your position on this is influenced by external factors." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what he was implying. Adrien kept his voice level. "My analysis is based purely on market data, Marcus. If you have concerns about the methodology, I'm happy to walk you through it." "Oh, I'm sure your methodology is very thorough, particularly your approach to stakeholder management." Valerie's voice cut through the tension like ice. "That's enough, Marcus. Unless you have substantive criticism of the analysis, I suggest we move on." But the damage was done. The speculation was now open knowledge. That evening, Adrien met Valerie at her apartment, the stress of the day written across both their faces. "He knows," Adrien said without preamble. "Marcus knows, and he's going to use it against both of us. Let him try. Valerie poured them both drinks, her movements sharp with anger. I've dealt with men like Marcus my entire career. He's a mediocre executive trading on his pedigree and connections. He has no real power. He has the board's ear. The board answers to shareholders, and the shareholders care about profit, which I deliver consistently. Valerie, you're not hearing me. Adrien took her hands, forcing her to focus. I don't care about my career. I'll walk away tomorrow if it protects you. But Emma, I can't risk losing my job entirely. I have to think about her stability. Something in Valerie's expression softened. I know, and I won't let that happen. Trust me, Adrien. I've built this company from nothing. I'm not going to let Marcus Grant or anyone else tear it down because they disapprove of who I choose to spend time with. And if the board forces the issue, then I make them choose between their moral outrage and their profit margins. Valerie's smile was sharp. I know which one wins. But Adrien could see the worry beneath her confidence, the same fear he felt. They were playing with fire, and eventually they were going to get burned. The call came on a Friday afternoon. Patricia's voice was unusually grave when she buzzed Adrien's desk. Mr. Cole, Miss Ashford needs to see you immediately. Conference room C. Not her office. A conference room. That was never good. Adrien's stomach sank as he walked down the hall. Through the glass walls of conference room C, he could see Valerie standing rigid, facing 3 board members, including Marcus Grant. The expressions on their faces told him everything he needed to know. This was it. The confrontation they'd both been dreading. He opened the door, and 4 pairs of eyes turned to him. Mr. Cole, said James Richardson, the board chairman, please sit down. We need to discuss a matter of some delicacy. Adrien sat, his hands clenched under the table. Valerie remained standing, her face a mask of controlled fury. Delicacy, she repeated, her voice dripping with contempt. Is that what we're calling baseless accusations and invasion of privacy? Now, Valerie, Richardson began, but she cut him off. Don't patronize me, James. Say what you came to say. Richardson sighed and slid a folder across the table. Adrien's hands shook slightly as he opened it. Photographs. Multiple photographs. Him and Valerie leaving the restaurant that first night, entering her building together, standing close in her office, their hands touching. The images were grainy but damning, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Someone had been following them, documenting their relationship. Where did you get these? Adrien's voice was barely controlled. Marcus leaned forward, his expression smug. An anonymous source concerned about the company's reputation and the potential liability of a personal relationship between the CEO and a subordinate. How convenient, Valerie said coldly. An anonymous source, not a vindictive executive who's been gunning for my position since Richard died. This isn't about me, Marcus protested. This is about protecting Sterling Global. If word gets out that you're having an inappropriate relationship, inappropriate, Valerie's laugh was harsh. I'm a 50-year-old widow. Adrien is a 32-year-old divorced father. We're both consenting adults. What exactly is inappropriate? Richardson intervened. The issue isn't your personal life, Valerie. It's the optics. A CEO having a relationship with someone she directly supervises creates liability concerns, sexual harassment claims, favoritism accusations, hostile work environment, all of which are baseless. Valerie's hands were flat on the table, her knuckles white. Adrien was promoted based solely on merit. His analyses have been instrumental in our Q3 performance. Anyone who suggests otherwise is welcome to review his work. That's not the point, Marcus said. The perception alone is damaging. We need to address this before it becomes public. Adrien found his voice. What are you suggesting? The 3 board members exchanged glances. Richardson spoke carefully. Mr. Cole, we'd like to offer you a generous severance package. 6 months' salary, extended health benefits, a glowing reference. You'd be able to find another position easily. You're firing me. Adrien's voice was flat. We're offering you an amicable separation that protects everyone involved. No. Valerie's single word cracked like a whip. Absolutely not. Valerie, be reasonable. I said no. Adrien Cole is one of the most talented analysts this company has. Firing him because of a personal relationship is discrimination, and I will not allow it. Marcus's patience was clearly wearing thin. Then what do you suggest? We can't have the CEO sleeping with subordinates. It's a scandal waiting to happen. The crude phrasing made Adrien's jaw clench, but Valerie's response was ice. Watch your language, Marcus. My personal life is none of the board's concern as long as it doesn't impact company performance, which it hasn't. Yet, Richardson said quietly, Valerie, we're trying to protect you here. These photographs haven't gone public, but they will eventually. And when they do, the media will have a field day. The shareholders will demand answers. Better to get ahead of it now. Valerie was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened, and Adrien recognized the shift in her posture, the CEO taking command. Gentlemen, I built this company from nothing after Richard died. In 5 years, I've doubled our market value, expanded into 3 new sectors, and maintained profit margins that make our competitors weep. I work 18-hour days, sacrifice every personal comfort, and give everything I have to Sterling Global's success. Her voice was steady, implacable. So when I tell you that my relationship with Adrien Cole is not up for discussion, not subject to board approval, and not anyone's business but our own, you will respect that. Or you can find yourself a new CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. Richardson recovered first. Valerie, you can't be serious. Deadly serious. She met each of their eyes in turn. Fire Adrien, and I walk. Force me to choose between this company and my personal happiness, and I choose happiness. Test me on this and you'll find I don't bluff. Marcus stood abruptly. You're willing to destroy everything for him? A junior analyst you've known for 3 months? I'm willing to stop destroying myself for a company that thinks it owns every aspect of my life. Valerie's voice softened slightly. I've given enough, Marcus. I've sacrificed enough. For once in my life, I'm choosing something for me. Adrien wanted to speak, wanted to tell her not to throw away her legacy for him, but the look in her eyes stopped him. This wasn't just about their relationship. This was about Valerie reclaiming pieces of herself she'd buried years ago. Richardson stood, gathering the photographs. We need to discuss this among the full board. Valerie, Adrien, will reconvene Monday morning. Until then, please maintain appropriate discretion. Appropriate discretion, Valerie repeated. Of course. The board members filed out, Marcus shooting Adrien a look of pure venom as he passed. When the door closed, leaving them alone, Adrien finally let out the breath he'd been holding. You shouldn't have done that. I know. They might actually fire you. They might try. Adrien stood and moved to her side. Valerie, I'm not worth losing everything you've built. She turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her expression nearly broke him. You don't get to decide what you're worth to me, Adrien. That's my choice. And I choose you. Adrien couldn't find words that felt adequate for what Valerie had just risked, so he did the only thing that made sense. He pulled her into his arms, feeling the tension in her shoulders, the way she trembled slightly despite her show of strength in front of the board. For a woman who commanded corporate empires, she felt surprisingly fragile in this moment. What happens now? He asked against her hair. Now we wait. Valerie pulled back, her professional mask sliding back into place, though her eyes remained troubled. Monday's meeting will determine whether the board backs down or calls my bluff. It wasn't a bluff, though, was it? She met his gaze steadily. No, it wasn't. The weight of that admission settled over them both. Valerie Ashford, the woman who'd rebuilt Sterling Global from grief and determination, was genuinely prepared to walk away. For him. The magnitude of it terrified Adrien almost as much as it moved him. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen reminding him that Emma had a birthday party at 3 o'clock. Real life, intruding on this crisis with its mundane demands. I have to go, Adrien said reluctantly. Emma has plans and I can't go. Valerie touched his face gently. Be with your daughter. She needs you more than I do right now. But as Adrien left the conference room, he couldn't shake the feeling that Valerie needed him more than she was willing to admit. He'd seen the photographs, understood what they represented. Someone had been watching them for weeks, documenting their movements with methodical precision. Marcus might have commissioned the surveillance, but the violation felt deeper than corporate politics. It felt personal, invasive, wrong. The weekend passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Adrien took Emma to her friend's birthday party, helped her finish a school project about butterflies, made pancakes on Saturday morning with extra chocolate chips because she'd gotten an A on her spelling test. Through it all, his phone remained conspicuously silent. No texts from Valerie. No calls. Just the heavy silence of two people waiting for Monday's verdict. Sunday evening, after Emma was asleep, Adrien finally broke down and called. Valerie answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "How are you holding up?" "I've had better weekends. Richardson called twice. So did my lawyer." Adrien's stomach dropped. "Your lawyer?" "Just being cautious. If the board votes to terminate your employment, we need to be prepared for legal action. Wrongful termination, discrimination based on personal relationships outside of work hours." She paused. "It won't come to that. They'll back down. You sound more confident than you did Friday. I've spent the weekend reviewing the numbers. Sterling Global's stock price has risen 43% since I took over as CEO. Our quarterly earnings consistently exceed projections. 3 of our biggest clients have personal relationships with me that would evaporate if I left. The board knows this. They're posturing, trying to reassert control they think I've taken from them. And if you're wrong?" Valerie was quiet for a long moment. "Then we figure it out together, you, me, and Emma. We find new jobs, new opportunities. The world doesn't end because Sterling Global decides to be stupid." The casual inclusion of Emma in those plans made Adrien's chest tighten. "She doesn't know about you yet. About us." "I know. I'm not trying to rush anything, Adrien. But if we're doing this, really doing this, eventually she'll need to know I exist." "She will. Soon. I just want to make sure everything is stable first." "Stable?" Valerie laughed without humor. "We're currently facing potential career destruction and public scandal. I'm not sure stable is on the menu." "You know what I mean." "I do." Her voice softened. "Get some sleep, Adrien. Tomorrow's going to be difficult enough without adding exhaustion to the mix." But sleep didn't come easily. Adrien lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind playing out a dozen different scenarios for Monday's meeting. Best case, the board backed down and they could continue their relationship with official disapproval but no active interference. Worst case, he lost his job. Valerie resigned in protest, and they both ended up unemployed with a 7-year-old who needed stability. At 6 a.m., Emma bounced into his room with her usual morning energy, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. "Daddy, you promised we could have waffles today." "Did I?" Adrien pulled her into a hug, breathing in the strawberry shampoo scent of her hair. "You said if I got an A on my spelling test, we'd celebrate all week. It's only Monday. We've got 6 more days of celebrating." "That's some creative interpretation of what I said. Mrs. Chen says I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up because I'm good at arguing." "Mrs. Chen might be right." Adrien climbed out of bed, his anxiety temporarily pushed aside by his daughter's infectious enthusiasm. "Come on, let's make those waffles before you're late for school." They moved through their morning routine with practiced efficiency. Emma chattered about her upcoming school play. She'd been cast as a talking tree, which she found hilarious, while Adrien made breakfast and packed her lunch. For these brief moments, he could almost forget what was waiting for him at the office. Mrs. Chen arrived at 7:30, her wise eyes taking in Adrien's haggard appearance with concern. "You look tired," she said in her direct way. "Something wrong?" "Just work stress. Nothing to worry about." She clearly didn't believe him but didn't push. "Emma told me about the waffles. Everyday celebrations now?" "Apparently my promises are legally binding." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Good father keeps promises, even the expensive ones." After they left, Adrien stood in his empty apartment trying to gather his courage for what lay ahead. His best suit, the one he'd bought for his wedding 6 years ago and rarely wore, hung in the closet. He put it on with mechanical precision, knotting his tie 3 times before getting it right. The subway ride to Manhattan felt longer than usual, every stop a countdown to the inevitable confrontation. Adrien rehearsed arguments in his head, prepared responses to accusations, tried to anticipate every angle the board might take. But underneath the mental preparation was a simpler truth. He didn't want to lose this job, but he absolutely wasn't willing to lose Valerie. When had that happened? When had the powerful CEO, who'd threatened to fire him that first night, become someone he couldn't imagine his life without? The The Sterling Global building loomed ahead, all glass and steel and corporate power. Adrien rode the elevator to the 42nd floor with his stomach in knots. The office buzzed with Monday morning energy, but he could feel eyes tracking him as he walked to his desk. Everyone knew. The photographs might not be public, but the rumor mill had done its work. Patricia called him at 8:40 feet. Conference room C, 9 o'clock sharp. Ms. Ashford is already there. Adrien arrived 5 minutes early to find Valerie standing at the windows, her posture rigid with tension. She wore a charcoal suit that screamed authority, her hair pulled back severely, every inch the commanding CEO. But when she turned and saw him, her expression softened fractionally. "Ready?" she asked. "No, you?" "Not even slightly." She moved closer, keeping her voice low. "Whatever happens in there, we present a united front. Don't let them divide us." "Agreed." The conference room door opened. Richardson entered first, followed by Marcus and 4 other board members Adrien recognized from company meetings. Their faces were carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Everyone took their seats around the long table. Richardson at the head, Valerie and Adrien on one side, the board members arrayed opposite like a jury. The chairman cleared his throat. "Thank you both for coming. I know this weekend was difficult for everyone involved. The board has discussed this matter extensively, and we've reached a decision." Adrien's hands clenched under the table. Beside him, Valerie sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. "Before we share that decision," Richardson continued, "I want to be clear about our position. Sterling Global has zero tolerance for workplace relationships that create conflicts of interest or potential liability. However," he glanced at Marcus, whose expression had gone sour, "we also recognize that Ms. Ashford's leadership has been exemplary, and Mr. Cole's work speaks for itself." "Get to the point, James," Valerie said quietly. Richardson nodded. "The board has decided to allow your relationship to continue, with conditions." Relief flooded through Adrien's chest, but he kept his expression neutral. Valerie showed no reaction at all. "What conditions?" she asked. "First, Mr. Cole will be transferred to a different reporting structure. He'll still work on strategic initiatives, but he'll report to Sarah Chen in the analytics division rather than directly to you. This eliminates any appearance of favoritism or impropriety." Adrien could live with that. It was reasonable, actually sensible. "Second," Richardson continued, "you'll both sign documentation acknowledging the relationship and confirming it's consensual and doesn't create a hostile work environment for other employees." "Standard HR procedure," Valerie said. "Agreed." "Third, and this is non-negotiable, you will both maintain absolute professionalism within these walls. No public displays of affection, no personal conversations in common areas, no behavior that could be construed as inappropriate given your positions." "We're not teenagers, James. We understand professional boundaries." Valerie's voice held an edge of irritation. Marcus leaned forward, his expression calculating. "There's one more condition, a significant one." Everyone turned to him. Richardson looked uncomfortable, suggesting this hadn't been part of the prepared speech. "If this relationship ends badly," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on Adrien, "if there are accusations of harassment, favoritism, or if Mr. Cole's performance suffers in any measurable way, he'll be immediately terminated without severance. And Ms. Ashford, you'll be required to step down as CEO." The room went silent. Adrien felt anger spike hot and sharp in his chest. "That's absurd," Valerie said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You're essentially threatening both our careers as insurance against a hypothetical future problem." "We're protecting the company," Marcus countered. "If your relationship becomes toxic or affects work performance, we need assurance that it won't drag Sterling Global down with it." "That's not a condition," Adrien said, finding his voice. "That's a sword hanging over our heads designed to make us end this regardless of how well it's going." "It's insurance," Marcus repeated. "Take it or leave it." Valerie stood abruptly. "Gentlemen, could you give Mr. Cole and me a moment alone?" Richardson looked uncertain. "Valerie, I don't think—" "Now, James." The board members filed out, Marcus moving slowly as though reluctant to miss what came next. When the door closed, Valerie turned to Adrien. "This is my fault," she said before he could speak. "I pushed too hard Friday, made them feel powerless. Now Marcus is using this condition to reassert control." "It's manipulative," Adrien said flatly. "Their betting will fold under the pressure." or that the relationship will implode on its own and they'll be positioned to capitalize on it. Valerie paced to the windows, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The question is whether we're willing to accept their terms. Adrien joined her at the windows, looking out over the city. Somewhere down there, Emma was in her second-grade classroom learning multiplication tables, completely unaware that her father was making decisions that would reshape their future. "I can't accept a clause that automatically ends my career if we break up," he said quietly. "That's not about protecting the company. That's about punishing us for daring to have a personal life." "I agree. But if we refuse, they'll force the issue, fire you for insubordination, pressure me to resign." Valerie's jaw tightened. "We have leverage, but it's not unlimited." "What leverage?" She turned to face him fully. "I wasn't bluffing Friday. If they fire you, I walk. And I take our 3 biggest clients with me. Richardson knows it. The others know it. Even Marcus knows it, though he'd rather die than admit it." "You'd really do that? Blow up everything you've built?" "Adrien." She took his hands, her grip firm. "I spent 5 years building this company as a monument to grief. Richard's legacy. Sophia's memory. I poured everything into it because I had nothing else to pour into. But now I do. Now I have you, and the possibility of something real and alive instead of just successful. So yes, I'd walk away, without hesitation." The certainty in her voice should have reassured him, but instead it amplified his fear. What if they walked away from Sterling Global together, and the relationship fell apart anyway? What if the pressure of unemployment and uncertainty destroyed what they were building? "We need a counter-offer," he said, thinking aloud. "Something that gives them assurance without putting a target on our backs." Valerie's eyes sharpened. "What are you thinking?" "We accept the first 3 conditions without argument. I transfer to Sarah's team, we sign the HR documentation, we maintain professionalism at work. But for the 4th condition, we propose quarterly reviews instead. If my performance metrics drop or if there are legitimate complaints about favoritism, then we revisit the arrangement, gives them oversight without the automatic termination clause." Quarterly reviews could still be weaponized. Marcus could manufacture complaints. "Then we insist on objective metrics only. Sales numbers, analysis accuracy, client satisfaction scores, things that can't be faked or manipulated through office politics." Valerie considered this, her mind clearly racing through implications and potential pitfalls. Finally, she nodded. "It's reasonable enough that Richardson will support it, and it removes Marcus's ability to use this as a personal vendetta." She squeezed his hands once before releasing them. "You're better at corporate politics than you realize. I grew up watching my father get screwed by people who valued connections over competence. I learned early how to spot a rigged game. Remind me never to underestimate you." They called the board back in. Marcus looked smug, clearly expecting capitulation. Richardson just looked tired. Valerie remained standing, her posture commanding. "We've discussed your conditions. We accept the first 3 without reservation. The 4th, however, needs revision." Marcus's expression darkened. "That condition isn't negotiable." "Everything is negotiable, Marcus. That's how business works." Valerie's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Here's our counteroffer. Instead of a blanket termination clause, we propose quarterly performance reviews for Mr. Cole based on objective metrics only: sales figures, analysis accuracy, client satisfaction scores. If those metrics show measurable decline, or if there are documented, substantiated complaints about favoritism affecting company operations, we'll revisit the arrangement." Richardson leaned back, considering. "Quarterly reviews based on objective data. That's actually reasonable." "It's too lenient," Marcus protested. What's to stop me from doing my job well?" Adrien interrupted, his patience finally snapping. "I've been with this company almost 3 years. My performance record is spotless. I work harder than anyone on this floor, and my analyses have contributed to significant profit gains. The only thing that's changed is that I'm dating someone you don't approve of. That shouldn't automatically condemn my career." "It's not about approval. It's exactly about approval." Adrien stood, meeting Marcus's glare head-on. "You don't like that Valerie promoted me based on merit instead of playing your political games? You don't like that she's found something personal that makes her happy, because you can't control it. So you're using this as leverage to reassert power you never actually earned. The conference room crackled with tension. Richardson looked between them, clearly weighing options. The quarterly review proposal is fair, the chairman said finally. It gives us oversight while allowing both of you to prove this relationship won't impact company performance. Marcus, unless you have substantive objections beyond personal opinion, I'm inclined to accept their counteroffer. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he was cornered and knew it. Fine, but the metrics will be reviewed by an independent committee, not by Ms. Ashford or anyone in her direct orbit. Agreed, Valerie said smoothly. We want transparency as much as you do. Richardson pulled out papers that looked suspiciously pre-prepared. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Cole. You'll transfer to Sarah Chen's team effective immediately. Your first quarterly review will be in 90 days. Both of you will sign the relationship disclosure forms by end of business today. And he looked at them both seriously. Please, for everyone's sake, keep your personal lives private. No more photographs. No more public speculation. The cleaner this stays, the better for everyone. Understood, Valerie said. Adrien nodded his agreement, relief and residual anger warring in his chest. The board members filed out, Marcus shooting them one last venomous look before disappearing down the hallway. When the door closed, Adrien let out a breath he'd been holding for what felt like hours. We did it, he said, almost disbelieving. We survived round one, Valerie corrected. Marcus isn't finished. He'll be watching for any excuse to prove we can't maintain professional boundaries. Then we don't give him one. Easier said than done when all I want to do right now is kiss you. Adrien felt a smile tug at his lips despite the lingering tension. Rain check? Definitely. They left the conference room separately, maintaining the professional distance that would become their new normal at work. Adrien returned to his desk to find an email from Sarah Chen welcoming him to her team and requesting a meeting that afternoon. The transition was already in motion. The rest of the day passed in a blur of administrative tasks and pointed looks from colleagues who clearly knew something significant had happened. Adrien signed the relationship disclosure forms, met with Sarah, who proved to be sharp, professional, and mercifully disinterested in office politics, and tried to focus on actual work. His phone buzzed at 6 p.m. A text from Valerie. My place, 8 o'clock. We need to decompress. Adrien smiled and typed back a confirmation before packing up his things. He picked Emma up from Mrs. Chen's, helped with homework, made dinner, and went through their evening routine with one eye on the clock. You keep checking your phone, Emma observed over chicken nuggets. Is something happening? Just waiting to hear from a friend. The lie felt uncomfortable, but he wasn't ready to explain Valerie yet. Not until things were more settled. A friend or a girlfriend? Emma's eyes went wide with interest. Do you have a girlfriend, Daddy? Adrien nearly choked on his water. Why would you ask that? Because you're being weird and happy, and you keep smiling at your phone like the teenagers Mrs. Chen talks about. She grinned, clearly delighted by his discomfort. It's okay if you have a girlfriend. I won't tell Mom. There's nothing to tell your mom, kiddo. But there is a girlfriend. Adrien sighed, realizing he'd walked straight into that trap. There's someone I've been spending time with, yes, but it's complicated, and I wanted to make sure it was serious before I mentioned it. Emma's expression turned solemn in that way children had of suddenly seeming much older than their years. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she make you happy? Yes, she does. Then I like her already. Emma returned to her chicken nuggets as though the conversation was settled. Can I meet her sometime? Soon, I promise. At 7:30, after Emma was asleep and Mrs. Chen had agreed to stay late, Adrien headed to Valerie's apartment. The elevator ride felt eternal, his mind replaying the day's events. They'd won, technically, kept their jobs, maintained their relationship, forced the board to accept reasonable terms. But the victory felt fragile, temporary. Valerie answered the door in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose, the CEO mask completely gone. She pulled him inside and kissed him before he could say a word, the embrace desperate and relieved in equal measure. I've been wanting to do that all day, she murmured against his lips. The feeling is mutual. They moved to her couch, wine already poured, the city lights glittering outside the windows. For a while they just sat in comfortable silence, the stress of the day slowly draining away. Emma asked if I have a girlfriend, Adrien said eventually. Valerie turned to him with raised eyebrows. How did that conversation go? She said, as long as you make me happy, she likes you already. He smiled. She wants to meet you. That's terrifying. Why? You negotiate with hostile board members and billion-dollar clients. A 7-year-old can't be scarier than that. A 7-year-old is exponentially scarier, Valerie said seriously. Corporate titans, I understand. Children are unpredictable chaos agents with no concept of professional courtesy. Adrien laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. She's a good kid. Smart, funny, opinionated as hell. You'll like her. I'm sure I will. I'm just worried she won't like me. I'm not exactly maternal. You don't need to be maternal. You just need to be yourself. Adrien took her hand. Besides, she's already decided she approves because you make me happy. Everything else is details. Valerie leaned her head on his shoulder. When did a single father from Iowa become the wisest person I know? Somewhere between my 3rd and 4th panic attack about raising a daughter alone. They talked late into the night about safer topics, books, movies, Emma's upcoming school play. But underneath the casual conversation was the unspoken awareness that they'd crossed a threshold today, made their relationship official in the worst possible way. Now everyone knew, everyone was watching, and one wrong move could destroy everything they were building. As Adrien left around midnight, Valerie held him at the door. I meant what I said in that conference room, she told him quietly. I would have walked away from Sterling Global. For you. I need you to know that. I know. And I need you to know that I would never have asked you to. That's why I was willing to offer. Adrien kissed her one last time before heading home, his mind already racing ahead to the challenges waiting. The quarterly reviews. Marcus's continued antagonism. The delicate balance of maintaining professionalism while nurturing something deeply personal. And eventually, inevitably, introducing the two most important people in his life to each other. The next few weeks established a new rhythm. At work, Adrien and Valerie were paragons of professional distance. They communicated through official channels, kept meetings brief and focused, never lingered in conversation. To the casual observer, they were merely CEO and analyst, nothing more. But outside the office, they built something that felt increasingly solid. Dinners at Valerie's apartment, long phone calls after Emma was asleep, quiet weekends where they explored the city together, always careful to avoid places where they might be photographed. Adrien's work with Sarah Chen's team proved challenging but rewarding. Free from the pressure of reporting directly to Valerie, he could focus purely on the analysis without worrying about appearances. His first month's performance metrics were strong, a fact that both relieved and vindicated him. Marcus remained a constant, hovering presence. Adrien would catch the senior executive watching him across the cafeteria or lurking near his desk, waiting for a mistake, hoping for failure. He's like a vulture, Adrien complained to Valerie one evening, just circling, waiting for something to die. Ignore him. He has no power beyond what we give him. But ignoring Marcus proved harder when the man actively worked to undermine Adrien's projects. Proposals that should have been approved languished in bureaucratic limbo. Clients who'd praised his work suddenly requested different analysts. Small sabotages that added up to significant frustration. Sarah Chen noticed. Marcus is targeting you, she said bluntly during one of their weekly check-ins. I've been in this company 15 years and I've never seen him take such active interest in making someone fail. What should I do? Document everything. Every rejection, every delayed approval, every instance where he interferes with your work. Build a paper trail. If he pushes this to the quarterly review, you'll need evidence that the problems are his doing, not yours. Adrien followed her advice meticulously, keeping records of every interaction, every project delay. It felt paranoid, but he couldn't afford to give Marcus any ammunition. Meanwhile, Emma's questions about his friend became more frequent and pointed. She'd noticed the late nights, the distracted smiles, the way he checked his phone constantly. When can I meet her? Emma asked for the 5th time in 2 weeks. Soon, kiddo, I promise. You keep saying soon. Soon is now, Daddy. Adrien couldn't argue with 7-year-old logic. That evening, he called Valerie. Emma's getting impatient. I think it's time. There was a long pause on the other end. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. She'll be part of this, whatever happens. She's already part of this. She just doesn't know it yet. Adrien took a breath. Next Saturday, lunch somewhere casual. No pressure, just the three of us getting to know each other. Okay? Valerie's voice was tight with nerves. Okay, Saturday. I can do Saturday. But Saturday never came. Thursday afternoon, Adrien's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He almost sent it to voicemail before something made him answer. Mr. Cole? This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the NYPD. I need to speak with you about Valerie Ashford. Adrien's blood went cold. What happened? Is she all right? She's fine, sir, but there's been an incident at Sterling Global headquarters. Can you come down to the station? We have some questions. The precinct was exactly like every police station Adrien had seen in movies. Fluorescent lights, scuffed linoleum, the smell of bad coffee and bureaucracy. Detective Martinez was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded him uncomfortably of Valerie. She led him to an interview room and gestured to a chair. Thank you for coming down, Mr. Cole. I know this is unusual. What's going on? You said there was an incident. Martinez pulled out a folder. Early this morning, someone broke into Ms. Ashford's office at Sterling Global. Nothing was stolen, but they left something behind, a photograph. She slid an image across the table. Adrien's stomach lurched. It was him and Valerie taken through the window of her apartment. They were on her couch, his arms around her, her head on his shoulder. The angle suggested it had been shot from the building across the street with a telephoto lens. And scrawled across the bottom in red marker were 3 words. This ends badly. Someone's been watching us, Adrien said, his voice hollow. For some time, apparently. We found evidence of a camera set up in the building across from Ms. Ashford's residence. Professional equipment, motion sensors, the works. Whoever did this has been documenting your relationship for weeks. Marcus Grant. The name came out before Adrien could stop it. Martinez's eyebrows rose. You think you know who's responsible? Adrien explained about the board meeting, the photographs that had mysteriously appeared, Marcus's vendetta against both of them. The detective took notes, her expression neutral. We'll look into Mr. Grant, but I have to tell you, stalking and surveillance cases are tricky. Unless we can prove he commissioned the surveillance or broke into the office himself, we're looking at a dead end. Corporate politics aren't criminal unless they cross specific lines. Someone broke into her office and left a threatening message. That's not enough? It's enough to investigate. Not enough to arrest without evidence. Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Cole, I need to ask some uncomfortable questions. How long have you been in a relationship with Ms. Ashford? About 2 months? Why? And before that, what was your professional relationship? Adrien saw where this was going. I was an analyst. She promoted me based on my work performance. Some might say the timing is convenient. Junior employees start sleeping with the CEO, suddenly gets access and opportunity. It wasn't like that. I'm not saying it was, but the person doing this surveillance, leaving threatening messages, they're trying to paint a narrative. Young man seduces older, wealthy CEO for professional gain. Classic manipulation story. That's insane. Valerie and I, it's real. It's not some calculated scheme. Martinez's expression softened slightly. I believe you. But someone is building a case that suggests otherwise. The photographs, the surveillance, now this break-in. Someone wants to destroy either Ms. Ashford's reputation, yours, or both. Adrien's phone buzzed. A text from Valerie. Where are you? We need to talk. Can I go? Adrien asked. Valerie doesn't know I'm here. One more question. Where were you between midnight and 6 a.m. this morning? Home. Asleep. With my 7-year-old daughter in the next room. Anyone who can verify that? Emma, but she's 7. And my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, comes at 7:30 in the morning. She can confirm I was there. Martinez nodded. Okay, you can go. But Mr. Cole, be careful. Whoever is doing this is escalating. Breaking into offices, leaving messages. That's not corporate politics anymore. That's personal. And personal can get dangerous. Adrien left the precinct with his hands shaking. He called Valerie from the sidewalk. Adrien, thank God, where have you been? Her voice was tight with stress. Police station, they wanted to ask about the break-in. They called you too? I've been here for hours. She paused. Can you come to my apartment? I don't want to discuss this over the phone. 30 minutes later, Adrien was in Valerie's living room while she paced like a caged animal. The photograph from her office lay on the coffee table between them, those 3 words glaring up accusingly. This ends badly. Marcus is behind this, Valerie said flatly. He has to be. The timing, the escalation. The detective said they can't prove anything without evidence. Then we find evidence. She whirled to face him. I won't let him terrorize us into submission. I won't let him win. Valerie, maybe we should... Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't say we should end this. Don't give him that power. Adrien stood and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms despite her resistance. I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say maybe we should hire our own investigator, someone who can find proof the police can't. She pulled back, searching his face. That could get expensive. I don't care. Neither should you. He touched her cheek gently. Someone violated your privacy, invaded your home. That's not acceptable regardless of who's behind it. Valerie's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. It's Richardson. She answered on speaker. The chairman's voice filled the room, grave and formal. Valerie, we need to talk about this morning's incident. The board is convening an emergency meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Your presence is required. James, this was a break-in. A criminal matter. What does it have to do with the board? The photograph that was left implicates your judgment. Questions are being raised about your relationship with Mr. Cole, whether it's affecting your ability to maintain security protocols, whether what, James? Say it. Richardson sighed. Whether you're fit to continue as CEO if you can't even protect your own office from intrusion. The line went dead. Valerie set down her phone with careful precision, her face a mask of controlled fury. They're going to use this against me. Against us. We won't let them. But even as Adrien said it, he felt the walls closing in. The surveillance, the break-in, now an emergency board meeting. Someone was orchestrating a campaign to destroy them, and they were running out of ways to fight back. That night, Adrien couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through scenarios. If Valerie lost her position, she'd be devastated. If he lost his job, Emma's stability would shatter. And if whoever was stalking them decided to escalate further. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m., a text from an unknown number. The message contained a single photograph. Emma, walking to school with Mrs. Chen that morning, completely unaware she was being watched, and below it the same red letters, "This ends badly." Adrien's hand shook so violently he nearly dropped the phone. They'd brought Emma into this. Whoever was behind this surveillance had crossed from corporate warfare into something far more sinister. He called Detective Martinez immediately, not caring about the hour. "They're watching my daughter," he said when she answered. "I just received a photograph of Emma going to school. You said this was getting dangerous. Well, now it's involving a 7-year-old child." Martinez's voice sharpened. "Forward me that message immediately. Don't delete it. Don't respond to it. I'm escalating this to our cybercrimes unit. Photographing children crosses legal lines that corporate surveillance doesn't." "What do I do? How do I keep her safe?" "Change your routine. Different route to school, different pickup times. Tell Mrs. Chen to be alert for anyone following them. And Mr. Cole? Consider taking your daughter somewhere else for a few days. Family, friends, anywhere that's not your usual pattern." Adrien hung up and immediately called his sister in Philadelphia. They hadn't spoken in months. His family had never fully accepted his divorce or his choice to stay in New York. But this was an emergency. "Katie, it's Adrien. I need a favor." His sister listened as he explained an edited version of the situation, leaving out the relationship with Valerie but emphasizing the stalking, the threats. To her credit, she didn't ask many questions. "Send Emma on the train tomorrow," Katie said. "I'll pick her up at 30th Street Station. She can stay as long as you need." "Thank you. I'll explain everything later, I promise." "Just keep yourself safe too, little brother." Adrien woke Emma at 6 a.m., her sleepy protest turning to excitement when he explained she was getting an unexpected visit with Aunt Katie. "But what about school and my play practice?" "Aunt Katie will make sure you keep up with homework, and the play isn't for 2 more weeks. You'll be back by then." Adrien packed her bag, his movements mechanical. "This is just a little adventure, okay, kiddo?" "Is something wrong, Daddy?" Emma's perceptiveness was showing again, her eyes too knowing for 7 years old. Just some grown-up stuff I need to handle. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it about your girlfriend, the one I haven't met yet? Adrien paused in his packing. Partly, but it's complicated, Em. I promise I'll explain everything when you get back. You better, and I still want to meet her. Adventures are fun, but I was looking forward to Saturday. The admission made Adrien's chest ache. He pulled his daughter into a tight hug, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent, memorizing the feel of her small arms around his neck. I love you, kiddo. More than anything in this world. I love you too, Daddy, even when you're being weird and mysterious. Adrien put Emma on the train to Philadelphia at 8 a.m., watching until it disappeared from sight. Then he headed to Sterling Global for what promised to be the most difficult meeting of his career. The boardroom was already full when he arrived. Valerie sat at one end of the long table, her posture rigid, her face carefully blank. Richardson occupied the head position, with Marcus and 5 other board members arrayed along the sides. Adrien had been told to attend, though his role in this meeting remained unclear. Thank you for coming, Mr. Cole, Richardson began. We've asked you here because the recent incidents directly involve your relationship with Ms. Ashford, and the board believes you deserve to hear our concerns directly. How considerate, Adrien said, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Marcus leaned forward with barely concealed satisfaction. The break-in yesterday raises serious questions about judgment and security. Someone was able to access the CEO's office, plant evidence, and leave without detection. That suggests either gross incompetence in our security protocols or what, Marcus? Valerie's voice was ice. Say what you're actually implying. Or inside assistance, someone who knew the security schedules, who had access to override codes. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. You think I helped someone break into my own office? Valerie's laugh was harsh. To what end? To generate sympathy. To deflect from legitimate concerns about your relationship with a subordinate. To create a crisis that distracts from performance issues. Performance issues? Valerie's control was fraying. Our Q3 earnings were up 18%. We've secured 2 major contracts this month alone. What performance issues? Richardson intervened. Valerie, no one is questioning your business acumen, but the situation has become untenable. The surveillance, the threats, now police involvement, it's affecting company morale and potentially our reputation. The situation is untenable because someone is stalking us, Adrien interjected. The person who commissioned that surveillance, who broke into the office, who is now photographing my 7-year-old daughter on her way to school, that's the problem, not our relationship. The room went silent. Even Marcus looked momentarily taken aback. Your daughter is being photographed? Richardson's voice was grave. This morning, I received a photo of Emma with another threatening message. The police are investigating, but right now the person doing this is escalating while we sit in this boardroom arguing about office politics. Marcus recovered quickly. All the more reason to question whether this relationship is worth the collateral damage. If your child is being targeted because of Miss Ashford, don't. Adrien's voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare suggest this is Valerie's fault. Someone with resources and connections is conducting illegal surveillance and making threats. Someone who clearly has an interest in destroying both our careers. Now, I'm not a detective, but if I were investigating who might benefit from that outcome, I'd look at people in this room. Marcus's face flushed. Are you accusing me? I'm stating facts. You've opposed this relationship from the beginning. You've sabotaged my projects, delayed approvals, and made no secret of wanting Valerie removed from leadership. The surveillance started right after the first board meeting about our relationship. You tell me if that's coincidence. That's slander. I could sue you for... Gentlemen, please. Richardson's voice cut through the rising tension. Accusations without proof help no one. Mr. Cole, I understand your frustration, but we can't make decisions based on speculation. Then make decisions based on this, Valerie said, standing. She pulled out her phone and connected it to the conference room screen. I hired a private investigator yesterday after the break-in. He found something interesting. The screen filled with financial records. Marcus's financial records, showing payments to a private security firm known for conducting corporate espionage. Dates that corresponded exactly with when the surveillance had begun. The room erupted. Marcus jumped to his feet. Those records are private. How How did I obtain evidence of your illegal activities? Valerie's smile was sharp as broken glass. The same way you obtained photographs of my private life. Turnabout is fair play, Marcus. Those payments were for legitimate security consulting. My investment portfolio includes payments specifically earmarked for surveillance services. The investigator was quite thorough. He also found email correspondence between you and the security firm discussing maintaining observation on specific targets. Want to guess whose names appeared in those emails? Marcus's face had gone from flushed to pale. Richardson was staring at the financial records with growing horror. Marcus, the chairman said slowly, tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Valerie continued. Marcus has been conducting illegal surveillance on me and Adrien for months. He commissioned those first photographs shown at the board meeting. He arranged the break-in to escalate the situation. And now, apparently, he's photographing children in an attempt to terrorize us into compliance. That last part isn't true. Marcus's voice had lost its confidence. I never authorized anything involving a child. That wasn't part of... He stopped, realizing he'd just admitted to the rest. The silence that followed was deafening. Richardson stood, his face grave. Marcus, you're suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. If these allegations prove true, we'll be pursuing legal action and reporting your conduct to the authorities. Security will escort you from the building. You can't do this. I've been with this company since my husband founded it, Valerie finished coldly. And you've spent every year since his death trying to undermine me because you believed you deserved to lead instead. Well, congratulations. Your vendetta has finally achieved something, your termination. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Marcus looked around the table, searching for support, but the other board members avoided his gaze. His empire of influence had collapsed in minutes. As Marcus was escorted out, still protesting, Richardson turned to Valerie and Adrien. I owe you both an apology. We should have investigated these incidents more thoroughly instead of questioning your judgment. The board has been manipulated, and I take full responsibility for not seeing it sooner. Apology noted, Valerie said, her voice still cold. But this doesn't change the fundamental problem. Someone, possibly Marcus, possibly someone he hired, is still out there, still watching, still threatening. My investigator found the surveillance equipment, but not the person operating it. Adrien's phone buzzed. Detective Martinez. I need to take this, he said, stepping toward the window. Detective? Mr. Cole, we've made an arrest. The man who broke into Ms. Ashford's office was caught trying to access the building's server room. He's talking in exchange for a plea deal. Claims he was hired by Marcus Grant to conduct surveillance and create evidence that would force you both out of the company. Relief and residual fear warred in Adrien's chest. What about my daughter? Was he the one photographing Emma? No. That appears to be a separate individual. We're still tracking that lead, but the phone used to send you that message was a burner purchased with cash. Harder to trace. So there's still someone out there. We're working on it. In the meantime, keeping your daughter out of the city was smart. Maintain that until we have more answers. Adrien relayed the information to the room. Valerie's expression showed relief mixed with lingering concern. So Marcus hired someone for the office surveillance and break-in, but someone else is photographing Emma, she summarized. Why would there be 2 separate operations? Unless Marcus isn't working alone, Richardson said quietly. Or unless someone else saw an opportunity in the chaos he created. The meeting dissolved into discussions of security protocols and legal strategies. Adrien stood at the windows, looking down at the city below, his mind on Emma safely in Philadelphia. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another photograph. This one showed Valerie entering her apartment building last night. The angle was different from the previous surveillance, closer, more intimate. And the message below made his blood run cold. She's not worth your daughter's safety. End it, or I will. Adrien's hand shook as he showed the message to Detective Martinez over a forwarded text, then to Valerie. Her face went pale. This isn't about the company anymore. This is personal. Agreed. Adrien's voice was hollow. Someone wants us apart badly enough to threaten a child. The question is who, and what they're willing to do to make it happen. Valerie pulled him aside, away from the board members who were still processing Marcus's exposure. Her eyes were fierce despite her pallor. We can't let them win. If we give in to these threats, they're threatening Emma. Adrien's voice broke slightly. Valerie, I love you. I want this to work, but not at the cost of my daughter's safety. I know. She gripped his arms. But running won't keep her safe if this person is determined. We need to find them first. How? The police are trying, Marcus is in custody, and we still don't know who sent that last message. Valerie's phone rang. Her investigator. Ms. Ashford, I found something. The burner phone that sent the message about the child. It pinged off a cell tower near Sterling Global headquarters. Whoever sent it was in the building when they did it. Valerie's eyes widened. Can you narrow it down further? Working on it, but Ms. Ashford? The timing of that message corresponds with your board meeting. Whoever sent it knew you were all gathered, knew they had a captive audience. She hung up slowly. The person threatening Emma was here, in this building, during our meeting. Adrien felt ice spread through his veins. One of the board members? Or someone with access to the building who knew about the meeting? Valerie's mind was clearly racing. Security staff, executive assistants, department heads who might have been briefed? Or someone who's been inside Sterling Global all along? Adrien said, a terrible suspicion forming. Someone who would benefit from both of us being destroyed. Someone with access and opportunity. They stared at each other as the pieces clicked into place. Patricia, they said simultaneously. Valerie's assistant. The woman who controlled her schedule, had access to her office, knew every detail of her professional and increasingly personal life. The woman who'd worked for the company for 15 years and had been passed over for promotion multiple times despite her loyalty and competence. She was there that first night, Adrien said slowly. When you told me to call you Valerie in private, she was right outside the door. And she's been at every board meeting, taking notes, coordinating schedules. Valerie's voice was hollow. She knew Marcus was conducting surveillance because she probably helped arrange his access to my calendar. But when he got suspended, when her plan to use him as a scapegoat fell apart, she escalated on her own. Adrien pulled out his phone, calling Detective Martinez back. We know who's been threatening us. 20 minutes later, police swarmed Sterling Global's 42nd floor. Patricia was at her desk, serene and professional as always, when Detective Martinez and two officers approached. Patricia Reynolds? We need you to come with us for questioning. The mask slipped for just a moment. Patricia's eyes found Valerie across the office, and the hatred there was shocking in its intensity. 15 years, Patricia said quietly. I gave this company 15 years. Covered for your husband's affairs, managed your grief, ran this office while you fell apart after Sophia died. And what did I get? A desk outside your door while you promoted pretty boys who smile at you across conference tables. Patricia. Valerie's voice was strained. Don't. Patricia stood, her movement sharp. You want to know who took those photographs? Who made sure Marcus had everything he needed to destroy you? Who sent that message about the little girl? Her smile was terrible. I did. All of it. Because you deserve to lose something precious the way I lost my career prospects watching you succeed. The confession hung in the air, ugly and final. As officers handcuffed Patricia and led her away, she called back over her shoulder. It won't work, you know, you and your boy toy. People like you don't get happy endings, Valerie. The world doesn't work that way. The office had gone silent, everyone frozen by the dramatic arrest. Adrien stood beside Valerie, watching her assistant, her trusted right hand for 15 years, disappear into the elevator in handcuffs. I never knew, Valerie whispered. All this time. And I never knew she hated me that much. It wasn't about you, Adrien said quietly. It was about her. Her resentment, her perception of being overlooked. You couldn't have known. But the words felt hollow even as he said them. Valerie had spent years trusting someone who'd been secretly working to destroy her. That kind of betrayal left scars that wouldn't heal quickly. Richardson approached, his expression grave. Valerie, the board would like to reconvene tomorrow. We have a lot to discuss. Marcus's termination, Patricia's arrest, the security breach. But for today, I think you should go home. Process this. Valerie nodded numbly, letting Adrien guide her toward the elevator. They left Sterling Global together, no longer caring who saw or what they whispered. The secrets were out. The threats were neutralized. But the damage had been done. That evening, in Valerie's apartment, they sat in silence for a long time. The city sparkled outside the windows, beautiful and indifferent to human drama. "I need to call Emma," Adrien finally said. "Tell her it's safe to come home." "Is it safe?" Valerie asked. "Patricia's in custody, Marcus is suspended, but the damage to your reputation, Emma's exposure to all this. We survived. That's what matters." "Did we?" She turned to face him. "Adrien, be honest. Is this worth it? Putting Emma through this stress, risking your career, dealing with my baggage and betrayals?" Adrien took her hands. "Emma is safe. My career is intact. Your position is secure, and yes, we went through hell to get here. But Valerie, listen to me. You are worth it. This, what we have, is worth fighting for." Tears welled in her eyes, the first time he'd seen her cry. "I'm 50 years old. I'm difficult, demanding. I have more emotional baggage than most people accumulate in 2 lifetimes. Why would you choose this?" "Because when I'm with you, I'm not just Emma's dad or the guy from Iowa trying to make something of himself. I'm Adrien, completely, fully myself. And you see that person. Not the employee, not the struggling single father, just me. That's worth every threat, every whispered rumor, every battle we had to fight." She kissed him then, salt from her tears mixing with the kiss, and Adrien felt something settle in his chest. They'd survived the worst. Now they could start building something real. His phone rang. Emma calling from Katie's house. "Daddy, Aunt Katie says I can come home tomorrow. Can I? I miss you." "I miss you too, kiddo." "Yes, you can come home. And Emma, remember how you wanted to meet my friend?" "Your girlfriend?" "Yeah, how about Saturday, for real this time?" "Finally! I thought you were never going to let me meet her." Adrien looked at Valerie, who was smiling through her tears. "Saturday, then. I'll make pancakes." "With extra chocolate chips?" "With extra chocolate chips." After he hung up, Valerie raised an eyebrow. "You're making pancakes? At my place?" "I figured it was time Emma saw where you live. Met the real you, not the CEO version." He paused. "Unless that's too fast?" "It's terrifying," Valerie admitted. "But no, it's not too fast. It's exactly right." They spent the rest of the evening planning Saturday, both nervous and excited in equal measure. The crisis had passed, but the real challenge was just beginning, building a life together, blending their worlds, proving that what they'd fought for was worth the cost. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of brilliant sunshine that made Manhattan look like it belonged in a postcard. Adrien stood in Valerie's kitchen at 7 a.m., staring at her professional-grade stovetop and second-guessing every decision that had led to this moment. "You're panicking," Valerie observed from the doorway, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. "I can see it from across the room." "I'm not panicking. I'm just recalibrating expectations." Adrien gestured at the pristine kitchen. "I promised Emma pancakes. Your kitchen looks like it belongs in a cooking magazine. What if I ruin it?" "Then we'll order breakfast and laugh about it later." Valerie moved beside him, her hand finding his. Adrien breathed. "She's 7 years old. She'll be thrilled you tried, even if the pancakes end up shaped like abstract art." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who promised extra chocolate chips." "No, I'm just the terrifying CEO meeting my boyfriend's daughter for the first time while trying not to seem like a terrifying CEO." Valerie's smile was nervous. "We're both in uncharted territory here." Adrien pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "We survived corporate espionage and stalking. We can handle breakfast with a 7-year-old. Your confidence is inspiring and possibly misplaced." They were both laughing when Adrien's phone chimed. Katie confirming Emma's train would arrive at Penn Station at 9:30. 2.5 hours, Adrien said, his stomach doing complicated gymnastics. "Okay. Pancakes first, then we pick her up, then we just see what happens?" "Sounds terrifying. Let's do it." The pancakes turned out better than expected, golden and fluffy, studded with chocolate chips that melted into perfect sweet pockets. Valerie watched Adrien work with an expression that made him self-conscious. "What?" he asked, flipping another pancake. "Nothing, just, you're good at this. The domestic thing. It suits you." Years of practice. Single parenthood is basically a masterclass in multitasking and making do. He glanced at her. You could learn, if you wanted. To make pancakes. To have this. Mornings that aren't about quarterly reports and board meetings. Just coffee and breakfast and someone to talk to who isn't trying to negotiate a better contract. Valerie was quiet for a moment. I spent so long convinced I didn't deserve that kind of simple happiness. After Sophia, after Richard, it felt wrong to want ordinary things. And now? Now I'm standing in my kitchen watching you make chocolate chip pancakes for your daughter, and I can't remember the last time I wanted something this badly. She moved to his side, her voice soft. I'm terrified I'll mess this up, Adrien. That I'll be too distant or too controlling or just fundamentally bad at connecting with a child who isn't mine. Adrien set down the spatula and turned to face her fully. Emma is the most perceptive kid I know. She won't need you to be perfect. She'll just need you to be honest. Can you do that? I can try. Then we'll be fine. They ate breakfast together, the conversation flowing easily despite their nerves. Valerie asked questions about Emma's interests, her school, her friends. Adrien found himself telling stories he'd forgotten. Emma's obsession with dinosaurs at age 4, her declaration at 5 that she would become president, her current fixation on learning everything about space travel. She sounds remarkable, Valerie said. She is. Takes after her dad. Adrien grinned at Valerie's eye roll. Okay, she's remarkable despite her dad. Better? Much. At 9:15, they headed to Penn Station. The weekend crowds were already thick, families and tourists and business travelers all flowing through the massive terminal. Adrien kept checking his phone, tracking Emma's train, his nerves ratcheting higher with each passing minute. She's gonna love you, Valerie said quietly, reading his anxiety. Or she'll decide I have terrible taste in girlfriends and never let me hear the end of it. Then she'll be honest. Sounds like someone else I know. The train pulled in at 9:32. Adrien scanned the disembarking passengers, his heart jumping when he spotted Emma's dark curls. She was holding Katie's hand, her small backpack bouncing as she walked, and then her eyes found him. Daddy! She dropped Katie's hand and ran, launching herself into Adrien's arms with the fearless confidence of children who know they'll always be caught. Adrien held her tight, feeling tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying drain away. Hey, kiddo, I missed you. I missed you more. Aunt Katie made me eat vegetables every day. It was tragic. The absolute worst, Katie agreed, catching up with an amused expression. She looked past Adrien to Valerie, her eyebrows rising slightly. Hi, I'm Katie, Adrien's sister. Valerie. They shook hands, Katie's gaze sharp and assessing in that protective sibling way. Thank you for taking care of Emma. Any time, though I expect a full explanation later, Katie directed the last part at Adrien. Call me when things settle down. Promise. After Katie left, Emma turned her full attention to Valerie. The 7-year-old studied her with open curiosity, taking in the expensive clothes and the confident posture and the obvious nervousness underneath. You're taller than I thought you'd be, Emma announced. Valerie blinked. Is that good? It's excellent. Tall people can reach high shelves. Daddy's useless at that. Emma grinned up at her father. Are you the girlfriend who makes him smile at his phone all the time? I suppose I am. Good. He needed someone. He was getting boring. Emma grabbed both their hands. Can we go somewhere fun? Aunt Katie's house was nice, but there was no park nearby, and I haven't been to a good playground in forever. Adrien looked at Valerie, a question in his eyes. They'd planned to return to her apartment, to keep things controlled and private. But Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, and maybe forced formality wasn't the right approach anyway. There's a great playground in Central Park, Valerie said. Not too far from here. We could walk. Emma's face lit up. Yes, can we get hot chocolate on the way, please? Absolutely not, Adrien said. You just had breakfast an hour ago at your aunt's. That was train breakfast. It doesn't count. Train breakfast absolutely counts. But, Daddy... We can get hot chocolate later, Valerie interjected, after you've burned off some energy at the playground. Deal? Emma considered this, then nodded decisively. Deal. You're good at negotiating. Daddy's too easy. Hey! Adrien protested, but both Emma and Valerie were already walking ahead, his daughter chattering away about her week in Philadelphia. They spent the next hour at a playground near the park's south entrance. Emma attacked the equipment with fearless energy, making friends with other children within minutes, organizing an elaborate game that seemed to involve dragons and astronauts in equal measure. Adrien and Valerie sat on a bench nearby, close enough to supervise but far enough to talk. "She's amazing," Valerie said, watching Emma negotiate rules with a boy twice her size. "Confident, articulate, completely comfortable in her own skin. You've done an incredible job raising her." "Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping up, but she makes it easy." Adrien leaned back. "What do you think? Is this too weird, the three of us?" "It's terrifying and perfect, and nothing like I imagined." Valerie's hand found his on the bench between them. "She hasn't stopped talking since we left the station. Does she always have this much energy?" "This is actually calm for Emma. Wait until she's really excited about something." They watched Emma convince three other kids to help build an elaborate spaceship from playground equipment and fallen leaves. Her organizational skills and natural leadership were already evident, and Adrien felt a surge of pride mixed with the familiar fear that he was somehow inadequate to guide this remarkable human being. "She's going to change the world someday," Valerie said quietly. "I can see it already. That kind of determination, that fearlessness, she reminds me of Sophia." The admission was soft, vulnerable. Adrien squeezed her hand. "Thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy. It's getting easier. Being around Emma, watching her live so fully, it doesn't make me miss Sophia less, but it reminds me that joy exists even after loss, that maybe I'm allowed to experience it again." Emma ran over, breathless and flushed. "Valerie, come see our spaceship. We need someone tall to put the flag on top." Valerie looked surprised, then pleased. "I'd be honored." Adrien watched as Valerie let Emma drag her toward the elaborate construction, his daughter explaining the spaceship's various features with serious intensity. Valerie listened attentively, asking questions that made Emma's face light up, treating the imaginative play with genuine respect rather than condescension. Other parents at the playground were watching, some with curiosity, some with recognition. Valerie Ashford wasn't exactly anonymous in Manhattan, but for once, she didn't seem to care about being observed. She was too focused on helping Emma place a stick flag at the top of their creation. After the playground, they got the promised hot chocolate from a street vendor. Emma insisted on walking between them, holding both their hands, chattering about her upcoming school play. "I'm a talking tree. It's very important. Trees don't get enough respect in plays. Usually they just stand there, but I convinced Mrs. Henderson that my tree should have opinions about deforestation." "Sounds groundbreaking," Valerie said seriously. "Literally." Emma giggled at the pun. "That's terrible. I love it." They ended up at Valerie's apartment around noon. Emma's eyes went wide when the elevator opened directly into the penthouse. "You live here?" She spun in a circle, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows and the sweeping views. "This is like a castle, a really modern, fancy castle." "It's just an apartment," Valerie said, but she looked pleased. "It's the coolest apartment ever. Can I see your room? Do you have a library? Daddy said you have lots of books." "I do have lots of books. Would you like to see?" Emma was already heading toward the hallway, her natural curiosity overriding any shyness. Adrien started to follow, but Valerie touched his arm. "Let her explore a bit. I'll keep an eye on her." So Adrien watched from the living room as Valerie gave Emma a tour, his daughter asking a million questions and Valerie answering each one with patience and genuine interest. They disappeared into the library, really a converted bedroom lined with bookshelves, and emerged 20 minutes later with Emma clutching 3 books about astronomy. "Valerie said I could borrow these. Look, this one has pictures of nebulas and everything." "That's very generous. What do you say?" "Thank you." Emma hugged the books to her chest. "Can we read one together?" "Of course." They settled on the couch, Emma between them, and Valerie opened the astronomy book. Adrien expected his daughter to get bored quickly. She had the attention span of a hummingbird most days, but she sat transfixed as Valerie explained planetary orbits and star formation in terms a 7-year-old could understand. You're good at this, Adrien murmured during a pause while Emma studied a diagram. I used to read to Sophia every night. Spacebooks were her favorite too. Valerie's voice was soft, touched with old grief, but not overwhelmed by it. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed it. Emma looked up. Who's Sophia? The question hung in the air. Adrien tensed, unsure how Valerie would respond to such direct curiosity, but Valerie's expression remained calm, open. Sophia was my daughter. She died when she was 7 years old, about your age. Emma's eyes went wide. That's really sad. I'm sorry. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but I still miss her. Do you think she would have liked space too? I know she would have. She wanted to be an astronaut, just like you. Emma considered this seriously. Then I'll be an astronaut for both of us. When I go to space, I'll take a picture of the stars, and it'll be from me and Sophia. Valerie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I think she would have really liked that. The moment passed, Emma's attention returning to the book, but Adrien saw the way Valerie's hand trembled slightly as she turned the page. He reached across Emma to touch Valerie's shoulder, a silent gesture of support, and she gave him a grateful smile. They ordered lunch, Emma's choice, which meant pizza with extra cheese, and spent the afternoon talking and laughing. Emma showed Valerie her favorite card tricks, performed a dramatic reading from one of the astronomy books, and convinced them both to play an elaborate game she'd invented that seemed to combine elements of tag, hide-and-seek, and interplanetary diplomacy. Around 4 o'clock, Emma crashed hard, curling up on the couch mid-sentence and falling asleep with her head on Valerie's lap. She does this, Adrien said quietly, covering his daughter with a throw blanket. Goes full speed until she just stops. Valerie stroked Emma's hair gently, her expression soft. She's wonderful, Adrien, truly. You should be incredibly proud. I am, but I'm also terrified every single day that I'm screwing up somehow. You're not. Trust me on this. Valerie looked down at the sleeping child. She's happy, confident, kind. Those things don't happen by accident. They happen because someone loves her unconditionally and shows her every day that she matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Emma sleeping peacefully, the city stretching out beyond the windows in late afternoon light. She likes you, Adrien finally said. I can tell. The feeling is mutual. Valerie smiled. I was so nervous about today, kept imagining every way it could go wrong, but Emma made it easy. She's just herself. No pretense, no games. It's refreshing. That's Emma. What you see is what you get. Like her father. Adrien felt warmth spread through his chest. So this worked? The three of us? This worked. Valerie's hand found his across the couch. I know we're still figuring things out, and there will be challenges ahead. But yes, Adrien, this worked. Emma stirred, blinking sleepily. Are you guys holding hands? That's cute. Gross, but cute. They both laughed, and Emma sat up, rubbing her eyes. Did I fall asleep? I never fall asleep. You were tired from your big week, Valerie said. How do you feel about dinner? I could make something, or we could order in. Can you actually cook? Emma asked with typical 7-year-old bluntness. I can. Would you like to help? Yes. Can we make something fancy, like restaurant food? They ended up making pasta from scratch. Well, Valerie and Emma made pasta, while Adrien was relegated to chopping vegetables and providing commentary. The kitchen filled with flour dust and laughter as Emma learned to roll dough, her small hands working alongside Valerie's experienced ones. You're really good at this, Emma said, concentrating hard on keeping her pasta strips even. Daddy burns everything. I do not burn everything. You burned toast last week. Toast, Daddy. It's literally already cooked bread. Valerie tried to hide her smile. In his defense, toasters can be tricky. Thank you, Adrien said. Finally, someone on my side. I didn't say he was good at it, just that toasters are tricky. Emma giggled, and Adrien found himself struck by the scene, his daughter and Valerie working together, teasing him, comfortable in each other's presence. This was what he'd hoped for but hadn't quite believed possible, his two worlds blending seamlessly. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Emma declared the pasta the best she'd ever eaten and proceeded to eat 2 full plates before announcing she was too full for dessert, then immediately asking if there was ice cream. After dinner, they watched a movie Emma picked, something animated involving talking animals and improbable adventures. Emma sat between them again, eventually falling asleep with her head on Adrien's shoulder and her feet in Valerie's lap. "We should get her home," Adrien whispered. "It's getting late." "She can sleep here if she wants," Valerie offered. "I have guest rooms." Adrien was about to decline automatically, to maintain some boundary between his life with Emma and his relationship with Valerie. But then he looked at his daughter, peaceful and comfortable, and at Valerie, who was watching Emma with tender protectiveness. "Okay," he said. "Yeah, let's stay." They carried Emma to a guest room decorated in soft blues and grays. She barely stirred as Adrien changed her into pajamas he'd packed in her backpack, years of practice making him efficient even in an unfamiliar space. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was sleepy as he tucked her in. "Yeah, kiddo?" "I like Valerie. Can we see her again soon?" "Definitely. How about next weekend?" "Promise?" "Promise." "Good." Emma yawned. "She's nice, and she knows a lot about space, and she doesn't treat me like I'm stupid just because I'm a kid. She is pretty great, isn't she?" "Yeah." Emma's eyes were already closing. "You can marry her if you want. I wouldn't mind." Adrien's heart jumped. We're not quite there yet, Em. But someday, maybe? Maybe someday. Okay. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, kiddo." Adrien found Valerie in the kitchen, cleaning up the dinner dishes. He joined her without speaking, falling into an easy rhythm of wash and dry. "Emma said something interesting," he finally ventured. "Let me guess. She asked when we're getting married?" Adrien nearly dropped the plate he was drying. "How did you know?" "Because she's perceptive and hopeful and sees things in simple terms. To her, we make each other happy, so obviously we should make it permanent." Valerie smiled. "It's actually quite logical from a 7-year-old perspective." "And from an adult perspective?" Valerie set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him fully. "From an adult perspective, it's terrifying and complicated and probably too soon to even be discussing. But Adrien, I've spent 5 years being practical and careful and protecting myself from any possibility of being hurt again. And where did it get me? Alone in a beautiful apartment, successful and miserable." "You're not miserable anymore." "No, I'm not. Because I took a risk on you. On us. And yes, it's only been a few months. Yes, there are 1,000 logical reasons to slow down and be cautious. But I'm 50 years old. I don't want to waste time being careful when I could be living." Adrien closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you. I know that's fast, maybe too fast, but it's true. I love you, Valerie Ashford." "I love you too." She kissed him softly. "And I know we have details to work out. Where we live, how we blend our lives, what happens at work now that everything's settled. But we'll figure it out. Together." "Together," Adrien agreed. They finished the dishes and moved to the living room where they talked until past midnight about the future they were building. Not in grand, dramatic terms, but in the small details that actually mattered. Weekend routines that could include both Emma and quiet couple time. How to handle holidays. Whether Adrien and Emma would eventually move in or if they'd maintain separate spaces for now. "I don't want to rush Emma," Adrien said. "She's been through one major life upheaval with the divorce. I want to make sure anything we do feels stable, permanent." "Agreed. We take our time, do things right. I'm not going anywhere, Adrien. This isn't a temporary thing for me." "Good. Because I don't think Emma would forgive me if I messed this up. She's already planning space missions with Sophia." Valerie's smile was bittersweet. "I'm glad they're friends in her mind. It's healing in a way I didn't expect." The following Monday, Adrien returned to Sterling Global feeling like he was entering a completely different company. Marcus was gone, Patricia was awaiting trial, and the atmosphere had shifted from tense paranoia to cautious optimism. His first quarterly review came 2 weeks later. The independent committee examined his work with clinical precision, project outcomes, client feedback, collaboration metrics. Adrien sat through the evaluation with steady confidence, knowing his performance spoke for itself. The verdict was unanimous. Exemplary work across all measured categories. No evidence of favoritism, no indication that his relationship with Valerie had impacted his judgment or professionalism. Congratulations, Mr. Cole, the committee chair said. You've effectively silenced any critics who suggested your success was based on anything other than merit. But the real victory came later that day, when Richardson called Adrien to his office. The board has discussed your situation extensively, the chairman began, and we've realized we owe you more than just a quarterly review. Your work has been consistently excellent, your integrity unquestioned. We'd like to offer you a promotion. Senior strategic analyst with a team of your own. Interested? Adrien felt the words settle over him. The vindication sweet, but not as important as it might have been months ago. I'm very interested, thank you. You've earned it. Richardson paused. For what it's worth, I misjudged you initially. Assumed the relationship with Valerie was about ambition rather than genuine connection. I was wrong, and I apologize. Apology accepted. That evening, Adrien shared the news with Valerie and Emma over dinner at a restaurant Emma had chosen because it had the best mac and cheese in the universe. That's amazing, Daddy. Emma threw her arms around his neck. Does this mean you're super important now? It means I get more responsibility and slightly better pay. Which means more chocolate chip pancakes. Which means we can probably afford chocolate chip pancakes more often. Yes. Valerie reached across the table to squeeze his hand. I'm proud of you. You've worked incredibly hard, and you deserve every bit of this success. Couldn't have done it without my team, Adrien said, looking at both of them. My very small, very important team. Emma grinned. Are we a team now? Do we need a name, like the Space Explorers or the Pancake Battalion? The Pancake Battalion is perfect, Valerie said seriously. I'll have t-shirts made. Really? Absolutely not. But I appreciate your enthusiasm. The months that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both extraordinary and comfortingly normal. Adrien excelled in his new role, building a team that shared his work ethic and analytical rigor. Valerie continued leading Sterling Global with renewed energy. The burden of secrecy and fear finally lifted. But the real transformation happened in the spaces between work and responsibility. Weekend mornings at Valerie's apartment became tradition, Adrien making pancakes while Emma and Valerie read astronomy books or planned elaborate imaginary space missions. They explored the city together, finding parks and museums and small restaurants that became their special places. Emma's school play was a triumph. She delivered her lines about deforestation with such passionate conviction that parents in the audience actually applauded between scenes. Adrien and Valerie sat together in the crowded auditorium, watching Emma command the stage with fearless confidence. She's incredible, Valerie whispered. She really is. After the play, Emma ran to them, still wearing her tree costume. Did you see? Did you see me? You were brilliant, Adrien said, hugging her tight. The best talking tree in theatrical history, Valerie added. Mrs. Henderson said I have natural stage presence. I think it means I'm loud. They took Emma for ice cream to celebrate, sitting in a small shop near the school, while Emma recounted every moment of the performance with dramatic flair. I messed up one line, but I improvised, and Mrs. Henderson said it was actually better than the script. So basically, I'm a genius. Basically, Adrien agreed. Later, after Emma was asleep and Adrien and Valerie sat on her couch watching the city lights, Adrien voiced something that had been building in his mind. I want to do this right, he said. Do what right? Us, you, me, Emma, building a real family. He turned to face her. I know we said we'd take things slow, but Valerie, I don't want slow. I want you in my life, officially and permanently. I want Emma to grow up knowing you as family, not just as Dad's girlfriend. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Valerie's voice was carefully controlled. Adrien pulled a small box from his pocket. It wasn't fancy. Couldn't afford the kind of rings Valerie probably wore to charity galas. But it was real. A simple gold band with a single diamond, purchased with money he'd saved carefully over the past month. I'm asking if you'll marry me. I'm asking if you're ready to take a chance on a guy from Iowa with a precocious daughter and a modest salary. I'm asking if maybe, despite all the logical reasons this shouldn't work, you believe it will anyway. Valerie's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? Absolutely sure. Because Adrien, I come with complications. A demanding career, emotional baggage, opinions on everything. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes. She laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll marry both of you, really. because Emma is part of this package, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Adrien slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed with the relief and joy of two people who'd fought for something precious and won. "We should tell Emma," Valerie said. "She'll be furious if we wait. Tomorrow, tonight, let's just be us." But Emma figured it out on her own the next morning when she saw the ring at breakfast. "You're getting married!" she shrieked, loud enough that Adrien worried about disturbing Valerie's neighbors. "I knew it! I totally knew this would happen." "Did you now?" Valerie asked, amused. "Yes, because you're perfect for each other and Daddy smiles all the time now, and you let me help cook and you know about space. Obviously you'd get married." Emma paused, suddenly serious. "Can I be in the wedding?" "You'll be the most important person there," Adrien promised. "Besides you guys getting married, obviously. But yeah, I'll be very important." Emma grinned. "Can I tell Mrs. Chen?" "She's been asking if Daddy has a girlfriend, and I've been dying to tell her, but you said to wait, and now I can finally say yes. And also, she's going to be my stepmom." Adrien and Valerie exchanged amused glances. "Yes, you can tell Mrs. Chen," Adrien said, "but maybe wait until after 7 a.m. She's probably still asleep." "Fine, but at 7:01, I'm calling her." The wedding, 6 months later, was small and perfect. They held it in Central Park on a brilliant October afternoon, surrounded by close friends and family. Emma served as both flower girl and junior officiant, taking her role with utmost seriousness. Katie flew in from Philadelphia, openly crying happy tears. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Adrien's parents made the trip from Iowa, his first real conversation with them in years, the divorce having strained family ties to near breaking. But watching their son marry a woman who so clearly loved both him and their granddaughter softened something in them. "You did good, son," his father said gruffly after the ceremony. "Real good." The Sterling Global contingent was well represented. Richardson attended with his wife, Sarah Chen brought her family. Even some of Adrien's team members showed up to celebrate. The company had evolved past the scandal and drama, and now Adrien and Valerie's relationship was simply accepted as part of the corporate landscape. During the reception, held at a restaurant with sweeping views of the city, Emma gave a toast that had the entire room alternating between laughter and tears. "My daddy used to be sad sometimes," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and confident. "After Mom left, he worked really hard and made sure I had everything I needed, but I could tell he was lonely. Then he met Valerie, and everything changed. He smiled more. He laughed more. He was happy." Emma looked at Valerie with pure affection. "And Valerie, you were sad too because you lost people you loved. But now you have us, and we have you, and nobody has to be sad anymore. So this is the best wedding ever because it's about family coming back together." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, dancing with Valerie while Emma spun in circles nearby with Mrs. Chen, Adrien felt the last piece of tension he'd been carrying finally release. "Happy?" Valerie asked, her head on his shoulder. Deliriously. "You? I didn't think I was capable of this kind of happiness anymore. Thank you for proving me wrong. Thank you for taking a chance on the guy who looked through your office door." Valerie laughed. "Best mistake I ever almost punished someone for." They moved into Valerie's apartment after the wedding, or rather Valerie's apartment became their home. Emma got her own room, which she immediately decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars and posters of nebulas. Adrien's modest possessions blended with Valerie's refined furnishings in ways that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Mornings became sacred time. Adrien still made pancakes most weekends, now with Valerie's help. Emma would shuffle in wearing mismatched pajamas, demanding updates on their latest family project, a plan to visit NASA over summer break, a fundraiser for the school's science program, a campaign to adopt a rescue dog that Adrien and Valerie were slowly caving on. Work continued, demanding and rewarding in equal measure. Adrien's promotion had opened new opportunities, and he found himself genuinely enjoying the challenge of leadership. Valerie remained CEO, but with a better balance between professional excellence and personal fulfillment. One evening, about a year after the wedding, Adrien found Valerie in the library looking at old photographs. Sophia smiled up from the pictures, forever 7 years old, frozen in moments of joy and possibility. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Better than okay?" Valerie touched the photo gently. I was thinking about what Emma said at the wedding, about family coming back together. She was more right than she knew. How so? Sophia will always be part of me. The grief doesn't go away, and I wouldn't want it to. But now, instead of just grief, I have Emma. I have you. I have this second chance at family I never thought I'd get. She looked at Adrien with shining eyes. Sophia would have liked Emma. They would have been friends. They are friends. In Emma's mind, they're planning space missions together. I know, and that brings me more peace than anything else could. Valerie set down the photograph and took Adrien's hand. I love you. I love our family. I love this life we've built from broken pieces. I love you too, all of you, CEO Valerie, grieving mother Valerie, pancake-making Valerie, every version. They sat together in the library, surrounded by books and memories, and the comfortable silence of two people who'd found their way home. In the living room, Emma was practicing her lines for the spring play. She'd been cast as a pioneering astronaut, naturally. Her voice carried through the apartment, confident and bright, filling the space with life and possibility. This was family. Not perfect, not without scars and complications, but real and chosen and fiercely protected. Adrien had come to Manhattan with nothing but determination and a promise to give his daughter a better life. He'd succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, not because of money or status, but because he'd found people worth fighting for. And Valerie, who'd spent years building empires from grief, had discovered that the most valuable thing she could construct was simple happiness. A home filled with laughter. A child who brought joy without replacing the one who'd been lost. A partner who saw her completely and loved her anyway. Late that night, after Emma was asleep and the city glittered outside their windows, Adrien and Valerie stood together looking out at Manhattan. Remember that first night? Valerie asked. When you looked into my office and I threatened to fire you? I was terrified. I was intrigued. Even then, before I understood why, I knew you were going to change my life. For better or worse. For everything. Valerie turned to face him. For love and chaos and pancakes and Emma's opinions on everything. For family and second chances and learning that it's okay to be happy again. Adrien pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. No regrets? Not even one. And there, in the home they'd built from courage and hope and stubborn refusal to let fear win, they stood together. Two people who'd been broken in different ways, who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who'd fought through scandal and threats and their own doubts to build something worth keeping. The city outside their windows never slept, and neither did their story. Every day brought new challenges. Emma's growing independence, work demands, the normal complications of blending lives and making family from choice rather than biology. But they faced it together, with humor and honesty and the bone-deep certainty that what they'd found was worth protecting. Years later, Emma would tell the story at family gatherings, how her father had met the CEO who'd threatened to fire him, how they'd fallen in love despite corporate intrigue and stalkers, and all the logical reasons it shouldn't work. She'd embellish the details, make it more dramatic, turn it into the kind of story people wanted to hear. But the truth was simpler and somehow more profound. Two lonely people had taken a chance on happiness, had chosen love over fear, connection over safety, messy reality over careful control. And in doing so, they'd created something neither corporate success nor careful planning could ever replicate. A family bound not by obligation, but by choice, not by perfection, but by persistent, stubborn, everyday love. The kind of love that showed up for school plays and quarterly reviews with equal enthusiasm, that made pancakes on Saturday mornings and strategized business deals on Monday afternoons, that honored the past while building the future, that understood grief and joy weren't opposites, but companions on the same journey. This was their story. Not perfect, but perfectly theirs. And it was just beginning.